Oh, I forgot to zoom in. Hey, everybody. Hold on. I'm zooming. I'm a zooming. Hi. Well, that was quite the start today. I forgot to start the live stream. I forgot to do everything, but we're out there now. I forgot to change my shirt. Oh, my, thank God Frank is here. Frank somehow makes the whole world better. Yes. I don't know that there's all that much to talk about this week. I actually thought it would be interesting. Zoom put out in their blog, the Zoom blog yesterday, the 6 sort of takeaways from Zoomtopia about how to do hybrid right. I thought it might be interesting to look at them because I'm not sure that I entirely agree with all of them, but I thought that would be interesting. But certainly if you have questions or thoughts or insights, I already see James has something, but definitely come on in to the Zoom. Head on over to toratechguide.com/ZTK. Still waiting to get the zoomtestkitchen.com URL from Jeff. Need that URL. But let's see what people have got. Let's just say hi real quick. I should say hi. Hi, James. Good to see you. And Ray and Frank. Also is here. Gerald is here. Mike is here. Robert's here. Pete, how are you, Pete?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
It's been a while. I've been busy with live events.
Yeah? How have they been going?
Crazy, nonstop.
In a good way, I hope.
In a good way. Next week we got Steve Martin and Martin Short coming to Portland.
Wow.
And I'm going to be working camera for that show.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Very nice. And Hasmuk is here. Thank God. Now we all know how terrible we sound because Hasmuk is here. That's fantastic. Good to see all of you. James, what you got for us?
Well, I've got an issue that's going to go away in 2 days and will come back in a couple months. So
now I'm intrigued. That's
right. And maybe Frank has answers to this one. But so the issue is we are a Google campus and a Zoom campus. So we use Google to schedule stuff and we all use Zoom. If you schedule a meeting today and put it on Sunday or Monday or anytime until March 9th, it's possible that the time will read 1 hour in the future in Zoom. So on Google Calendar, it'll show up correctly. And most of the time in your Zoom web portal, it'll show up correctly, but some of them don't. One way to really recreate the issue is if you take an event outside of your current time zone, right? Because currently I'm in GMT 05. On Sunday, I will be in GMT 06. And you click and move it a meeting, it will more likely have the error. Now, if I take an event, schedule it for Saturday, I can move it up and down and it stays the same. It's just when I go outside the time zone, sometimes it fails. And Zoom support is absolutely no help.
Ouch. So it sounds to me like this is an inconsistent problem. Yes?
Yes.
Which makes it even worse. So,
yeah.
Frank, picking on you only because you're also on a campus, any insights into this?
I don't know. I probably need more information. Are you physically going to a different time zone? Like, is the computer like a laptop and you're taking it to a different time zone?
No, when you do.
Sorry, go ahead.
So, I mean, the time zone changes its GMT offset. So people on the East Coast if I'm correctly, are currently -0.04. And on Sunday, they will be
Yeah, because of
-0.05.
daylight savings.
And so what Google says is it translates those times to UTC, which is Universal Coordinate Time or something like that, which never changes. And they say they do that before it actually schedules it, but I don't know the all the mechanics there. But Google doesn't have an issue. It's just that how it updates to Zoom, and I find that whenever I've seen it, it's happened right away. The person who described it to me, they would schedule the meeting. Right after they schedule the meeting, they need the Google Calendar to see all their teammates to see when they can schedule it. And they log into the Zoom web portal and they copy the invite from the Zoom web portal, and then they put it into their system. And that's how they knew, like, that said the correct time. And then when they went back, it had changed. But every time I do it, it's wrong immediately on the Zoom web portal. So
I have not experienced that. Has anyone else?
Are they copying the exact information, or are they copying the link to the event? Because the link to the event is GMT. So if they're copying the time and making their own entry into their calendar, they're the ones making the mistake. I guess. I thought about this since we talked the other day.
no, so on the Zoom, they say, copy invitation. And in the invitation, it will say that.
But the link is still linked to GMT. So when you open the link, the computer will decide, well, that's plus or minus where we are at the moment you open the link. I believe. It's just my shot at it.
Yeah, that sounds right. Like, I'm pretty sure Zoom uses your operating system's time to make that calculation.
I have a question.
Sorry, go ahead.
Are you going through, what is that, remote software for, if you're home and you want to hook to your company's mainframe or whatever?
VPN.
Yeah, VPN. Are you going through that, and does that change any clocks in the process?
I'm not using VPN, and I can still get the issue.
Okay.
The user who seems to have the issue crop up more often is on VPN. I'm not sure what VPN. I mean, like, I don't think the VPN brings them to a different time zone. But
Well, I can do a little more conversation when it comes to VPNs if you want. Basically, the VPN, again, depending on the Zoom software. Now, again, if the Zoom software is looking at your system clock, then it'll base it on the system clock. If it's getting affected by the VPN, it then is looking at the IP address, which is different because where the IP address is located in the global GeoIP database, there is such a thing as a GeoIP database. Now, and it's based on where your IP, as far as the internet is concerned, you live. So if you are VPNing into a server that is potentially on the West Coast and it's using the GeoIP database, it will then think you're on the West Coast time zone. Okay, so just as an example, so if you're on the East Coast and you VPN into a server on the West Coast, and the server is and the software is looking at the GeoIP version of the public internet IP, then it will pick up the West Coast's time zone.
Interrupt
so-
for just
Yeah.
real quick, because it could be a VPN issue, but it also could be just that something is not set. So thank you, Frank, for posting the information in the chat that Zoom uses the time zone your computer is set to. But if you go into your Zoom settings, you in your profile, you also have a time zone that you can set. So I guess one of the things to think about is, or to check, is make sure that your time zone in your computer and the time zone that's set in Zoom match up and that they're both correct.
Right.
And-
And the thing is that is correct in terms of it saying Central Time, but it only says Central Time. It doesn't say that it doesn't mention the GMT 05 or the GMT 06. It just says it's Central Time.
But it
Right,
knows
so
what
there's
central
a-
time is.
Right, but there's a drop down here. So if I search for Central Time, I don't have an option to put Central Time without GMT -5.
Exactly. You don't have options. You just say your Central Time, and that is
No.
correct.
No, but what I'm saying is that your issue is that it says just Central Time. I'm not sure, that seems like there's something wrong with that, because if you look at mine, if I were to choose Central Time, well, I can't now because I just zoomed in, but if I were to choose Central Time, it says it correctly. It says Central Time -5, GMT -5.
Right.
And the server should do the calculation based on the time of year. So if your profile is correct, like what David just showed, then it should account for that. The only time I've ever heard it not accounting for it is there was a weird thing where I think Australia, they split the time zone in one of the states in Australia, and
Half hour.
yeah, something, they changed the way their daylight savings worked, and the operating systems didn't take that into account yet.
By the way, just one other thing to bear in mind, and I just learned this week because I have a Tuesday and Thursday class at 9 a.m. Eastern, sorry, at 8 a.m. Eastern, but the teachers of the class are in the Middle East. And so they did daylight savings this past Sunday. We're not doing it until this Sunday. So we were off for this 1 week. Everything was off. All of our schedules were off, which is something I had honestly never thought of. So if you're working with
The
people who are
UK, the UK is the same thing. UK changed.
Oh,
last
UK
week.
also changed. Thank you. So yeah, so if you're working with people who maybe in not just a different time zone, but a place where time zones change at different times, I wonder if that could be part of the issue.
And Belgium does not coincide with the UK. So different parts of Europe have different things.
Yeah,
Mexico-
Robert is saying he had to join 1 hour earlier today.
Last year, I think Mexico created a new time zone in one of the states in Mexico, and the operating systems like Windows 10 or whatever 11 it wasn't taken into account, which was causing issues. But generally
I didn't know
speaking,
you could do that.
well,
Could we just
countries
create
can
our
do whatever
own?
they want.
Let's create a
Well,
test kitchen time zone. That would
start
be
your own
fantastic.
country, then you can do whatever you want. But normally, it's based on your operating system and your profile in Zoom, and it's supposed to do the calculations. It's supposed to know about time changes in different places and do it automatically, so that your guests don't have to figure it out. You don't have to figure out for them based on where they live. It's supposed to understand where they live and make the calculations for them.
Is it possible for me to do a screen share so it just works and doesn't give me any errors
Please,
since you're all watching?
please.
And I don't think I have anything confidential there. Okay. So I'm going to take this event here, and I'm just going to move it to 5 a.m. And then I'm going to update my Zoom web portal. And it says 6 a.m.
I have a question for you about what you're doing here. Do
And
you
let me-
have bidirectional syncing? Like, do you have your
Yeah.
calendar synced with Zoom, and are you using bidirectional syncing?
Yep. Now let me move this to Saturday.
How about it moving it back to 8?
Let me just move it to Saturday. Which I just did. And I update it. 5 a.m., 5 a.m. Let me just move it to 7 a.m. 7 a.m. I move it.
So wait a second. It's now I'm confused. So it's just on one day that you're having this problem?
Well, no, it's Saturday. I'm in GMT 05. On Sunday, I'm in GMT 06. Right?
Why?
Because
That
the time
doesn't
change happens at 2 a.m. Sunday morning. At least in most. For me, it does. I don't know what time
Yep.
it does for you, but
Oh, so you're saying, I'm sorry. So that's okay. So on Saturday, it's working fine. On Sunday, it's not working because of the time change. That's what you're saying.
right. So it's like
Okay.
here, 10 a.m., 10 a.m. I move it. I'll move it to Sunday. And this is what I call the slip method. Uh-oh. Hopefully I didn't get my limit of, it says 11 a.m. Okay.
What happens if you go to Monday?
It shouldn't change. But let me go in here and let's edit this to, let's just go to 1. It doesn't occur as often if you do it this way. And if I'm changing, I'll just change this just so I can see it. Save it. 1 a.m. And now if I update it, well, 1 p.m., sorry. But so there's something different in the mechanism to one degree of editing and saving as opposed to just picking up and moving it. But there's times where you still edit it and it still does that hour offset.
It sounds like it's something in calendar.
have you tried signing out of your Google Zoom integration and signing back into your Google Zoom integration, the calendar service? Have you tried like disconnecting it and reconnecting it?
I have. The two things is, so our integration where it's integrated with Zoom specifically is through the plugin. The person who I've done always does it through the Zoom Chrome extension.
I don't use that, but I think you can you can get rid of that extension and then re-add it. I don't know specifically about this time change thing, but I know a lot of times when people have problems with their calendar integrations, if they uninstall them and reinstall them or sign out and sign back in, it fixes a lot of the problems.
Right. And the Zoom Chrome extension, or as they used to call it, the Zoom scheduler, never used to have those issues. It's only the integration that has really those issues. But I don't know. I don't want to totally take over here because we didn't say hello to everyone yet. But
you know what? It's a fascinating quandary.
And it's only the issue is not going to be an issue on Monday morning. So I guess I can close my ticket Monday morning because it won't be an issue until March 10th.
I thought you said that on Monday you still had problems.
Well,
the problem
in the future, he doesn't know if it'll stay there.
So let's try Monday and see if it's just a one-day thing.
The issue is currently all the time says I'm currently in a GMT 05 time zone.
Yes.
And on Monday, I will be in a GMT 06 time zone. So
the question is Sunday going 2 a.m. or 2 p.m.? Is that the problem? Does Monday fix it is the question.
Let's see, Monday is still like I would expect Monday to still have the issue. So it's at 1 p.m. and let's see what it updates to. It's 1 a.m. there.
1 p.m. It fixed it.
So this says 12. My scheduled time is 11. So it doesn't fix it.
It
But
just didn't it fix it just the moment ago when you were at 1?
It's an intermittent issue.
Ah,
And I'm saying when you slide it, it's more likely to be wrong. But anytime, it's just that it's real easy for me to slip between Saturday and Sunday here on the calendar instead of scheduling a bunch of January 24th meetings. But I would just see if anyone else has seen that. And
does anyone else sync with a different calendar, and is that also having problems?
I use Outlook as a calendar. And one thing I noticed is that when I first started traveling to another time zone, I would sync that with my phone, and it got messed up. So I think there's a way in Outlook calendar to leave everything set to whatever time zone you want. And then when I would travel to another zone, I would just, if I had a 5 o'clock appointment in that other time zone, I'd set it what the difference is in the calendar. That way it would get messy on me. It's a little complicated, but it works for me.
For
So
Outlook, there's
Robert, who deals with time zones all around the world, suggests that James, is your laptop clock on GMT -5? Your laptop clock.
I don't know.
your operating system.
Bottom right corner.
Your operating system.
My
Bottom
My
right
op-
corner of your browser, or
bottom
of your
right.
taskbar. Oh, you're on Mac.
Yeah, my taskbar's not working on my Mac. Can you fix that?
We need to put another ticket in for that.
It's in system preferences. Time.
It's a dock.
No, my time is correctly in the Mac.
So if you change your calendar but don't change your clock on your computer, it's not going to change, right? Aren't they related?
The clock will change when it comes time to change the clock.
Right, but if you
On Sunday.
force the change, if you say now it's already time zone 6 or 4 or whatever, one different now, how does Monday look?
That will then mess it up because your computer will then on Sunday will do it again.
I'm just saying for test purposes. Yeah.
Yeah, I know what Ray's talking about. What Ray's basically saying, James, is have you tried forcing yourself into a different time zone, which will be the new time zone as of Sunday, to see if that still happens? To see if it's either Google or Zoom that's not listening to your changes.
And you can even change your computer to date and time. You can change your computer, tell it's now Monday and it's 13 o'clock.
You're making my mind hurt.
Sorry, James.
Just tell the computer you've moved to Hawaii and everything will be fine. That changes your time zone beautifully.
And you don't really care. Surf's up.
And maybe I shouldn't admit to this, but today I got a letter from the memory care house to say schedule my get my appointment in now for and I'm like, have you guys been watching me or what?
Well, we hope you'll report back to us when you solve this problem.
Yeah, and I was just saying it's I suppose interesting to see right now because we're so compressed up against this time change. And so most anything you're scheduling today, you're scheduling into the future of time zones. But
So how about if some of us pop into our own calendars and create a new meeting on our Zoom account, and then try moving it around and see if we have the same problem that James does? Because, it could be a computer problem or it could be something else. So anybody up for testing? No testing? Well, I'm going to go test. I'll come back and tell you what I've done.
I think
That's
You know I'm going
always-
to do that.
I think Ray's idea has a lot of merit. Go into your system preferences and
I'm not changing my no.
Well, you do whatever you want.
I'll do like James.
All you have to do is change your don't allow it to be automatic. Tell your operating system that you want it to be a certain date and time right now, and see how it reacts. Maybe this will fix itself at 2:00 on Sunday morning.
right, no, I expect this all to fix itself 2:00 Sunday morning. And actually, I figure it fixes itself at an hour or so when I sign up for the day, because it'll just be like, well, no one's going to bother me until Monday, and if they try it Monday, it's going to work. So, and that's what I'm kind of wondering: is the Zoom team doing the same thing? Like, let's just run the clock out on this one, and we'll go, hey, are you still having the problem today?
Yeah, but again, it's not clear to me that the issue is with Zoom.
Agreed.
I mean,
I'm not trying to get them off the hook. I'm just saying.
I don't know.
Well, they are a global company.
I don't know where the issue is coming between Google and Zoom. And as you said, like someone using Outlook as the calendar integration, or what's the other integration?
iCal.
What am I?
The only thing left is to blame it on Hasbro.
Yeah,
Guess not.
What happens in South Africa? Do they have time zones? Do they stay the same? Do they have any like crazy daylight saving time? Because
He's just giving us the clock. Don't bother him.
because the only thing I've found is there's coat savings time. Is in the fall, you put on your coat and you find $1, and you thank the person last spring for putting the $1 in the coat for you.
But it's only worth 98 cents. So how thankful can you be?
But
all right. I think we've wrapped
let's
this up,
move on.
David.
Yep.
What do you think?
I'm loving it. This is fantastic.
That's just because you said there was nothing to talk about today.
See, yeah, absolutely. What else? I hail if you not have.
Oh, I
Okay,
got a question.
Robert. Robert needs a spell check because I hail scan this problem if you cannot hail your system. I know he writes. Sorry. Yes, my friend, go for it.
So I was working for a client this year, and would get the Zoom meeting ready on site. And one of the biggest problems I had, which I don't think is avoidable, is Zoom a little window would pop open with a sound saying you got a meeting in 5 minutes. And that sound would come over the whole sound system in the venue we were at. Is there any way to get rid of that?
Well, I wouldn't activate the feed from Zoom into the room until you're in show mode. If that's my understanding, because you're sending pre-show audio to the room. Am I understanding that right?
Yeah, I don't think that's avoidable though. I don't think that can be fixed.
What, is the
So wait-
audio guy in the house on cans?
No, it's all preset audio. So I would just go in, or someone else would go in and just operate. Actually, you know, our job was more operating the video system, but we had to have a computer there to monitor Zoom. Someone else would take care of the panelists, so to speak, and anyone else talking. Yeah, there was that issue, and trying to think of a few others, but I'll come up with them when I remember.
Because that's the only thing I would do is I would mute the house, the Zoom feed to the house until it's go time.
Yeah.
It's like office hours when they chat for the first 5 minutes before they go live. And Alex likes that chatter to go out, but if it was in an auditorium, you wouldn't want it.
Maybe I'm misunderstanding the issue. Is this an issue of sound playing in the room
Yeah.
back through to Zoom?
Yeah. So in the bottom right corner of my Zoom window that I'm watching, a little window would open up and make a sound saying you got a meeting in 5 minutes or whatever time it does. Is there a way to stop that from happening?
Yeah. Are you in Windows or in
Yeah.
Windows, you just turn off notifications?
Same thing on Mac. Just turn off in the notification center.
Okay.
That's if it's an operating system notification. Are you
No,
saying
it's
it's a Zoom notification?
The Zoom notification.
Okay. I've never heard of that.
Applications can give notifications too.
Right. Yeah.
They're managed by your notification.
But that's still right. But that's still all on your
System.
operating system. Yeah.
Yeah. My suggestion is if this is always this PC that is being used is always going to be used for production purposes, that you do it at the OS level. Shut all system notifications and system sounds in Windows specifically. There is that section where you can go in and disable all system sounds, all system notifications for any program by default at the actual audio mixer level within the sound system.
Another
and then
thing
you won't have any bings or anything else when you're on Zoom all of a
On-screen
sudden happen.
pop-ups.
Yeah.
Another thing to think about is how you route your audio. So the way I've done it here is I've got Zoom on this machine, Ecamm, which is the production suite that I use, and then system audio, basically everything else. And I have those routed to 3 different channels on my board. So I can, when I hop into a Zoom, I can just mute all of my system audio except for the things that I want. And you can use tools like Loopback or anything else to do that, or hardware also.
Yeah, we can't touch anything audio because there are 3 other parties involved between us, the operator, and the end client.
Pete, here's also another trick that you might want to play with as well, is if you totally don't have access to any audio, but you're getting fed audio and you're bringing that in through like a line input or mic input on your PC, is temporarily in Zoom, go to a different audio device as a mic.
Okay.
And that would actually
we
disable
can't-
audio.
We're not allowed to do that either unless otherwise directed, because it's a complex system with a video switcher and audio thing.
No,
incorporated.
No. I'm talking, yeah. Again, Pete, understand what I'm saying about this. This is within the Zoom client,
Okay.
right? I'm not talking
about.
about their video switcher, audio mixer, any of their gear. I'm talking about what they're giving you as audio video back to you. You still have full control of in your Zoom client.
Yeah, we're
what
not
I would-
allowed to change that at all, unless directed to.
Can you talk to the sound guy and tell him the problem? No, he doesn't
it's
care.
It's a complex between
Tell the client he's gonna have to
myself
live
and
with
the
it.
end party. So
What about changing the notification sound so it isn't quite as obnoxious?
We can try that.
Get it whispered to you.
Yeah, or you could actually, in Windows, you could actually make a WAV file that's blank and then just use that if you wanted to. If you really have to go that far with this.
Or a few little bird chirps. Twitter, Twitter.
I think you have to call that X now.
Not for the birds.
Oh, sorry, Pete. That's another one we didn't solve.
Yeah,
Jay,
we're,
the Zoom
we're
test
batting
kitchen.
0 for 0 here.
Who else has got something we can resolve? Lois, this is usually your job to bring us
Oh.
problems we can't resolve. Your hand's up.
My hand's up because I was going to go and test out what James had done. And, I don't use that Google Calendar very much. I set one up, but, I just don't even go and look at it. But I did go put in my meeting, scheduled a meeting for Sunday afternoon, and said, yes, connect it to Google Calendar. Didn't show up. So how do I get a Zoom meeting to show up in a calendar? It's a newbie question,
You
guys.
have to get the appropriate calendar application, and then you have to set up the settings.
So I have a Google Calendar.
Okay. And you have to do the integration.
Now, what are you talking about the integration? I've got a Zoom
If
meeting
you're-
and a Google Calendar.
As a system, it depends if you're doing it for yourself or if
Yes.
you're doing it for the organization.
Just
Usually
me.
you do it for the organization, and then you allow individuals to do it themselves. So
Huh?
you have to go account management, account settings, and then you have to find the calendar tab, and then you have to allow calendar integrations. And once you've done that, as an individual, you go into your own settings, your personal settings, and then you have to do the calendar integration in there.
All right.
And that may involve downloading an application for Microsoft. There's a few of them. One of them is a plugin, and one of them is an add-on. And then one of those two is actually no longer supported, and people are still using it, which causes problems. And I can't remember which is which right now, if it's the plugin or the add-on that's no longer the desired way to do it. And Google will have a similar thing, and iCal has the same thing.
Okay, so I'm using Google Calendars, and you said go into admin, account management, right?
Yep.
All right.
I don't have it open in front of me, so I'd have to go look.
You want me to share?
Sure. Sharing's good.
Okay, hold on. I'm gonna get back to you so I can go share screen. Oh, come on, where's share screen? I can't do it. You've got me
Yeah, David's the only one that can do that.
locked out.
Yeah, David stepped away for a moment. I don't think I can.
What do you all need?
Lois needs to share a screen.
She can share. Anyone can.
Thank you.
I lost the button again. Okay, I found it now. They keep moving these buttons around. It is so annoying. Okay, and I'm going to do.
I have it open on my computer. So it's account management, account settings. Then
Hold
there'll
on.
be all the, yep, no problem.
I'm getting there.
Sure.
I just have to find the right window. It's in here somewhere.
So you log into the Zoom US web portal. Oh, you guys know that they're changing it to zoom.com instead of zoom.us November 4th, right?
But they better keep zoom.us.
No, it's changing to zoom.com, I think, for support and stuff like that.
Well, they better have an auto forward. Okay, here I am. I'm in account management,
Account settings.
and then account settings are there.
Along the top, you'll
Right,
see a bunch
and
of
I'm-
tabs. One of them says mail and calendar.
Oh, I don't just search for calendar. Okay, mail.
Oh,
and
you can. If you like using the search bar, you can do it that way. But
Okay. Calendar and contacts integration. I don't want contacts.
yeah, so then under integrations, calendar and contacts integration, you have to turn that on.
Even though I don't want to.
But it's like a global
Okay.
setting for, and then you pick the things you want down there. Do you want read write? Do you want
Okay, so-
contacts? Do you want mail?
See, calendar I don't want contacts.
Then
Calendar and-
don't put those check marks in those boxes if you don't want contacts. It's granular. You can pick which things you want.
Here we go. Here we go. We say Google and then choose your permissions, calendar, contacts. You cannot do anything. Thank you very much. Okay, so that looks good. Does that look good?
I think so.
All right. Save
I've
that.
never done the Google one. We're not a Google organization.
Yeah,
But
that's
I'm
what
sure
I've got.
I'm sure it'll prompt you for the rest of the things you need to do.
At Google as default calendar and contacts by selecting Google, your following Office. What is Office 365?
That's
Isn't that a
environment.
Windows thing?
Yeah.
I'm not on Windows.
It's a Microsoft thing.
Yeah.
Microsoft Office, Word, PowerPoint.
Yeah, but I don't use any of that stuff. I'm on a Mac.
There's I haven't done this with Google, but just for people who may be listening to this show later on, for the Office ones, if you're part of a company or an organization, your Office administrator has to also allow this on the admin side, or you're not going to get very far because it's going to send a message to the system like to the server, and then someone from whoever administers that server
Gonna
has to
jump
also
on you.
allow it, or it won't work.
Yeah. Lois, that's a browser. Office 3, Microsoft 365. It's just a browser option so that you can get to PowerPoint, Word, Excel, and what have you. Don't be afraid of it. You have to pay for it. So
But I don't need it because I have
that's correct.
I have all the stuff, but just not with
That-
those names.
That's
So here
correct.
I am. Here's my Google Calendar. Notice there's nothing on Sunday the 5th. I come back to this is my meetings. If I edit my meeting, I'll see that this meeting is the 5th at 2 p.m. I'll make it 4 p.m. What the heck?
I don't think this is going to work. You didn't finish the setup. You have to go back to your personal settings and do the integration now that you've allowed the account globally to use integrations for
Oh,
calendars.
so this wasn't all we had to do.
This is allowing the users on this account to have this functionality. Then you have to go back to your personal settings.
This is my personal settings.
Oh, okay. So
I mean, I am one
settings.
person, so I go back up at the top here.
You're one person, but it's still Google's.
Is that it?
Google. Yeah. Zoom's organizational structure is the same for one person or 1,000 people. You still have to follow the
I see it.
process.
I see a calendar tab,
Yeah, and then you have to configure that part.
and it's
so that it'll-
automatically integrate. Okay, yeah, I checked that.
Okay.
I'm going to move that out of the way. So what else do I have to do?
It doesn't look like you have to do much else there. I don't
Is
see
that-
anything else.
Yeah, I'll turn it off and turn it back on. Just in case. All right,
I have never done the Google one, so maybe someone else knows more about
that's
it
my
than me.
Google
But
Calendar. I'm refreshing. Nothing showing up on the 5th. My meeting is at 4 p.m.
So
on the 5th.
let me just interrupt for a second, Lois. So you schedule that in Zoom?
Yes, I am in
Yeah.
Zoom.
So the calendar integration is the other way, I believe. The idea of I believe is that you can schedule things on Zoom, and then you can schedule things in Google, and then they show up in Zoom. So if you get out of Zoom for a second,
But here it says, what calendar are you using? Google Calendar. So why isn't it putting it on the calendar?
you may have to download a extension or a plugin. And David, at least for Microsoft, there is a setting for bidirectional, and it doesn't always work properly. But when it does work, if you do it in Zoom, it populates your calendar. If you do it in your calendar, it populates Zoom. So, but you
right?
need
But
to,
if it sounds like it looks like all that you did is you set it up on the Zoom side. It looks like you didn't set anything up on the Google side.
Well, it says, what calendar do
Right,
you
but that's
want it
just in
listed
Zoom.
on?
Right, but that's just
So-
Zoom. You now have to, in Google, you now have to give it, set it up over there. You have to, because you want bi-directional, you have to set it up in both places. So if you head on over to let me pull my Google Calendar over and see if I can show you this.
Okay, I'll put this Google Calendar back up if you'd like to see it.
So let me
Yes.
just share.
Okay, I won't then.
No. So no, you don't have to. You can stay in sharing. I'm going to do it this way. So this is my calendar. So if I wanted to create a new event here, I think it's the colors are off here because of something else. But I have an add-on called Zoom Meeting. Right. So when you go into your settings, is it settings? I forget if it's settings or no, it's not settings. Where is it? Oh yeah, it is settings. Sorry. Settings, and then on the left-hand side you'll see add-ons. Where are add-ons?
Just
Oh, add-ons. Here we go. Down at the bottom, Zoom for Google Workspace. So there's all the way at the bottom, there's a little button there that says Manage Add-ons. So you need to add Zoom for Google Workspace to Google, then they can communicate to each other. Right? You said in Zoom, you told
yes,
Zoom.
I heard what you're saying, and I have a vague memory of it happening when I was using the Mac calendar. Not in Google, but are you sure that Zoom doesn't create a link and put it over on your calendar?
Well, but let me ask you this. How does Zoom know what calendar is yours?
I told it.
No, you just said Google Calendar. Did you log in?
I am logged into everything.
No, but in Zoom, did you log in over in Zoom? Did you tell Zoom what your Google credentials were? Because if you didn't,
it didn't ask.
That's precisely my point.
Maybe it asks some other time, but I don't know.
No, but that's my point, is that it has no idea what Google account. Why
would it ask which calendar do you want? Why would it ask that if it's not going to do anything about it?
I don't know.
Frank, have you got any comments on any of this stuff?
I put 2 links in the chat on how to do this. I don't think it's good to try and do it live, especially when we didn't know this was coming, but I haven't done it for Google. I've done it for Microsoft a couple different ways. And like I said earlier, there's a few caveats. One is if you're part of an organization, the system administrator has to allow it or it's not going to work. And the other one is you want bidirectional syncing so that the Zoom talks to the calendar and the calendar talks to Zoom.
Where did you see bidirectional? I didn't see that in any of the settings we went through. Is it in Zoom?
Google, I don't know for sure that Google supports it. I've never done this with Google because I'm not part of a Google organization.
Okay. Thank you. I guess I will try it some other time. And
the links are in the chat, though, to the relevant support documents.
Okay. So I'll just really quickly. So here are the steps. You go to the web portal as you did, account management, account settings, mail and calendar. You did all of this. General, click the automatically sync Zoom calendar events information bidirectionally between Zoom and integrated calendars. So you have to toggle that. Now, I don't think, is that the one that you toggled?
We did not go back into general and toggle anything.
Right. So in the mail and calendar tab under general, there's an automatically sync, at least here it says, there's an automatically sync. Let me take us in there and see if we can, settings. Yeah, I know. Account management, account settings. Sorry, I went to the wrong place. Let me go down to account management.
And yes, it is on. I did that.
You do have that on. Okay, great.
Yeah. I searched for calendar, so I didn't know exactly where I was, but yes, that is on.
Okay. And then integrated calendars. Okay.
Number 4 is bidirectional sync.
Right.
Your list of things to do there.
So then, well, that really is not very helpful. It doesn't tell us the rest of it. Okay, set up kind of, yeah, that we did.
David,
Okay,
I would
cool.
be happy to let this drop and move on to something that might be of more interest to more people.
I know, but now I'm frustrated that we can't figure it out.
I put a link in the show notes that might help.
Or Discord. We have Discord.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We can let it go. Sorry.
What are show notes? What are show notes?
Sorry, chat. In chat.
Thank you.
My mistake.
Although we
Now
should
that-
be using notes, shouldn't we?
Yeah. Yes, of course.
We should
Whose
be
meeting
using
is
notes.
this?
Yeah, I know. We should be using notes. It's Lois. I just want to say that you're right that this may not be very interesting to a lot of people, and if more people did this, I think it would be, and if it were perhaps easier, if the integration were easier, more people would do it, and I think that it would make people's lives a bit easier. This is basic, but really, really important. Especially if you live, I don't know about anyone else. I live out of my calendar. And so that integration is absolutely fundamental. I never schedule things in Zoom and then expect to see them on my calendar. I always schedule from my calendar and then they show up in Zoom. So that's, and I will say that doesn't, like, if somebody, here's a point of frustration, and maybe I'm doing something wrong. If someone invites me, if I create a calendar event with Zoom in it, then it shows up. If someone else creates a calendar event with Zoom in it, I'm not sure that I always see it in Zoom. I'm not sure that it always shows. I could be wrong about that, but I'm not sure it always shows up. Hi, Robert.
It's coming in Zoom. Don't you have to register for it to show up if it's not yours?
No, that is to say, if someone else creates an event, a calendar event that has a Zoom attached to it, and then invites me to that calendar event, it doesn't always show up in Zoom.
And that is perfectly logical because in Zoom, either I created the event, in which case it shows up as mine, or it's one that I've registered for, in which case it shows up as a notification of an upcoming event.
Right. What I would love is, and again, this may exist, I may be doing it wrong. What I would love is anytime Google sees Zoom in an event, I wanted to send a little love note over to Zoom and say, hey, is this yours? Because if it is, you should add it so that when I go into my Zoom portal and I see my list of upcoming meetings, I can just click start or join.
One little thing, David, I can add quickly as a tip for me is that sometimes I notice when people do make a Zoom event with myself and they don't put the URL of the event in the location bar in Google Calendar, it will not show up in Zoom. Client.
Yeah, I don't even think about putting the Zoom URL in the location in Google. And you're right. That's the place to put it. Yeah. Pete and Robert, go for it.
So, I have a completely different related question.
You want us to be looking at your many, many buttons and screens?
No, it's my regular camera just died. So This is all I can do right now.
Love it. Need some cord management there, my friend.
Yeah. One of these days. So anyway, back to the client I talked about where I was doing working Zoom meetings. As a host or co-host, most of the time we are a co-host, our view of the window, we set up on gallery and we spotlight what's coming from the video switcher. When we have to spotlight someone who's remote on Zoom, it changes our visual to speaker view. Is there any way to stop that from happening? other than go back and switch it manually.
Are you using ZoomISO?
No, just it's a Zoom webinar.
So let me just be clear. So you're a co-host.
Yeah,
You're looking at gallery view.
yeah.
Someone else spotlights, and your view changes to speaker view, which is the spotlight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I spotlight someone, and then I have to bring them up on the video switcher for the output of that.
Right.
So my computer switches to speaker view.
Right. So I'll tell you the way that I've gotten around that is by using ZoomOSC. And when I select someone, and then when I press my, on stage button, it has a multi-action. So it puts them on stage, it lowers their hand, it unmutes them or whatever. And then the last action that it takes is it immediately puts me back in gallery view.
Okay.
Because you're right, it's very frustrating that it doesn't do that.
Yeah, because we got a video switcher with multiple inputs, cameras, and the Zoom laptop program output is going into it. And then to spotlighting that person, we got to spotlight them first. Our window on the computer changes. It's annoying.
What if you used follow host view?
That's the layout of gallery, I believe. I don't believe that is.
For spotlighting?
So
Okay.
here's a thought, Pete. And
Yeah,
it may not solve your problem, but
Yeah.
I believe that if you have someone spotlighted and then you go back to gallery view, if you then replaced spotlight with another one, I don't think it triggers going to speaker again. I think the trigger, it does the first, if you just replace, you don't.
Yeah, it still triggers it, as far as I know.
Let's try this. So
Yes.
I'm gonna make who am I making? Pete, is this you?
Yeah.
All right, I'm making you a co-host
Okay.
so that you can spotlight to your little heart's content.
All right.
And see what happens.
I'm gonna spotlight.
And while he's doing that, I'll say that also in ZoomOSC, my bottom left button is on my Stream Deck is always speaker view. Excuse me, is gallery view. Like I just have it because every once in a while it won't take. I have a button that its only job is to put me back in gallery view.
I'd love them to use OSC, but like I said, there's 3 levels of clients involved.
Yeah, understood.
How many? Do you have any spare inputs on your switcher?
Yes. But
how about having 2 laptops or 2 computers and having one the gallery all the time, like the wide shot, and having the second input on the switcher being the close-up, which would be whoever spotlighted. Then you could cut to the wide shot.
No, but the problem is that the wide shot changes every time someone's spotlight.
Yeah.
I don't know. All right.
All right. So if you look here on my monitor, this monitor here is on gallery. Okay. And I am going to spotlight who we got here, Lois. Now, if you look at my what I'm sending, Lois is fully there. Now it's switched back.
So with me spotlighted, try replacing spotlight and just test.
Hang on a second. I'm going to replace it with Mike. And there's Mike.
And he would like me to speak, so I will.
Can you do that again? Because I don't know if my button was too fast, or I think I stayed in gallery view. Can you replace spotlight again with not me?
Everyone has to stay on gallery view and look at what I'm sending here.
Right,
Okay.
and you need to stay.
Monitor.
You also need to go to gallery view now.
Yeah, I can manually switch it over.
Okay.
But every time I spotlight or replace spotlight,
So now he replaced Spotlight. That was
Mine
a
did not
replace, right?
switch. Mine did not switch.
No,
from
yours did
Gallery.
not switch, but his did.
Yeah, because well, as a host or co-host, you can set what the viewers are watching to either speaker mode or gallery mode
No,
in
you
that
can't.
client. Yes, you
You-
can. In that,
I have control on my computer, whether it's gallery or speaker. Even if someone is spotlit, I can go to gallery. I did go to gallery. You switched the spotlight. I did not get knocked out of gallery.
Yeah. Can you guys do it here? Can you do it here?
What do you mean?
Do you have the ability when you pull down that screen with the gallery speaker view? Now, at this venue, if I pull that down, I can switch my view to gallery speaker. I can switch the viewer's view to gallery or speaker, but we leave that on speaker for the viewers. Okay.
Are you talking about a webinar instead of a meeting? Because I don't know what you
Yeah,
mean by
webinar.
viewers.
Yeah, it's a webinar. It's a
Oh,
webinar.
forget it then. We're in a meeting. We can't
Well,
have a webinar here.
Don't say forget it. There's Zoom Events now has Zoom Studio, which would give you more control probably, right? But that's a different license. Have you
Yeah.
tried that?
Like I
Tested
said, it's
that?
too many levels outside my.
Okay, well,
Yeah, anything I suggest has to go through official channels.
usually when I'm getting that kind of resistance, I test it in advance and demonstrate how it can work, and then you're more likely to change people's minds. If you're not gonna, it's easier to get forgiveness than it is permission. So what I'll do is I'll do, not in the real event, but in a pseudo event, I'll do a proof of concept and I'll show them how it can work once I've got all the bugs worked out, and then they're more likely to buy into it because everyone's risk adverse, right? They don't want to take a chance on something they kind of know works for something they've never seen. So usually I demonstrate my proof of concept working, and then you're more likely to get buy-in.
Yeah. I totally understand that. Unfortunately, let's see, how does this work? I am working for an AV company who is contracted to the end user. However, that AV company has two departments. They have the production department, which I work for, and then they have the installation department who recommends all the changes. So we can't really talk to the end user about changes in hardware, software, unless we go through the installation department.
Has anyone complained, or is this just something that bothers you?
It's even my boss doesn't like it. So
Does the client care?
I don't know. With the end client, we can make operational suggestions on what do you want to do next, kind of thing. But any physical changes in hardware, software has to go through the official channels.
So it sounds like putting something on your keyboard or on your switcher or something, some button that switches between speaker and gallery. And there is such a thing in the keystrokes in the meeting list. I hope there's such a thing in the webinar. And then every time you spotlight, you click that button and click that button, and maybe that's the best you're going to be able to do.
Yeah, the best we can do is when we spotlight someone is to switch it back manually to gallery. So.
And have you got a quick button to do that with?
No, we don't. We can't. We don't have OSC or Stream Deck.
No, I'm talking about Zoom.
Oh yeah, the upper right-hand corner with the mouse.
Okay, so what I'm telling you is that in Zoom, they have keystroke equivalents for many of their functions, this being one of them. And you can use their keyboard, which is a bunch of things, and you go like that, or you can reassign it to an empty key on your keyboard. Now, I have
like
these big keyboards. So at the top, there's all those F numbers, and some of them were blank. They're not blank anymore. I've got speakers on and off, mics and video and Zoom, all sorts of stuff. I even have camera, even though that's kind of funky.
Okay, so you're talking about hotkeys then, right?
Well, I don't know what you call them. That's
Yes, they're hotkeys.
Yeah. Okay, all right, that makes sense. We could probably do that.
because you have control of your keyboard.
That's a great workaround, Lois. That's fantastic.
That's why you guys like to have me here.
We do love to have you here.
All right. Well, thank you. And does that help at all, Pete? I know it doesn't fix your problem, but does it help?
Yeah, it does. It does. I mean, if I'm doing something on my own, I'm probably going to go with ZoomOSC and program things that way. But with this other setup, there's too many hoops to jump through to make any hardware changes or anything like that. I mean, let's put it this way. My boss in the production department called me up one day when they were doing a hardware change and said, "Can you get over there and see what's going on?" Because we just found out they're making the changes now. And I'm like, yeah, I made provisions and ran over there to see what was going on. Just so and ask questions about how things were happening. It's a interesting setup in a like a small auditorium. There's a video projection, there's multiple mics, there's a lectern where people can plug in their laptop, and overall it works pretty good. It's just a few minor stuff that we don't like, which is the problem with Zoom. So that's that. The other question I have is, which I doubt it'll ever be fixed unless Zoom comes up with something, is there a possibility of setting up a 7-second voice delay or something like that?
Pete, where do you want that voice delay?
Going out to everyone.
From where?
For whoever's watching on Zoom or outside of Zoom. I know it can be done outside of Zoom. Can it be done in Zoom?
I'm not aware of it being doable within Zoom for everyone. In other words, it's not a global setting. If you do require that, you'd have to have 2 Zoom meetings and delay and put the delay between the 2 meetings.
Yeah. We theorized we'd have to have multiple computers doing this. And even if they had the budget to do it and wanted to, it'd be kind of mind-boggling to filter and switch and whatever for that.
Yeah, and on top of that too, Pete, you would have to be very careful that if you are delaying the audio, you also have to delay the video, or you're going to have sync issues too.
Yeah.
So you have to delay. When you're delaying everything. Yeah.
So, it'd be very difficult to do unless Zoom comes up with something.
I'm just doing a quick search to see if there's a Zoom app that might help with that, but I'm not.
That's more of a broadcasting feature, like call-in radio shows and other things.
Yeah.
What's the purpose of your delay, Pete?
In case someone drops the F-bomb.
And what would you do if that happened?
Which has happened. Cut it out.
So if you've got a 7-second delay and someone starts cursing, what do? Just mute them?
Right. Initially, the host mutes them and then identifies that person and removes them from the Zoom.
And are you going to have, can you do that in 7 seconds? I doubt it. And B, what happens to your stream if you have chopped out 7 seconds? what comes on? Is this, it sounds like a bleep, or there's black air. You move things up so you don't have a delay anymore. What are you going to do with 7 seconds?
Yeah, I know. I don't know. It's a mind-boggling thing to think of. I mean, I'm sure it is possible to do, but to do it within Zoom would have to reprogram.
It's not going to happen. Think
No,
about
there's-
how few people need this. Zoom's not going to code this for, less than 1% of their user base.
Yeah,
There's external hardware solutions for
Yeah.
these sort of things.
Right.
They're
You
going to
just
leave
need-
it to external hardware.
yeah,
You
yeah.
get a big button and have someone with their finger on it, so that when someone starts saying things like that, it just beeps them out.
That was
It's
awesome.
that simple.
That,
Very nice.
That,
Very nice.
yeah, that and what actually the broadcast world is starting to do now more often is in their disclaimer at the beginning before the event, this event is live. There may be, insert here, profanity, nudity, da 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 da. Viewer discretion is advised.
Can I get can I get the link to that meeting? Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
that's gonna get you more customers there.
Yeah, actually, yeah, you should not beep anything. You're right.
It's
You know
good
what's
for
interesting?
ratings.
It's interesting that they do have this feature built into Zoom on the chat side, right? You can already filter chat out for certain words, or you can make sure your chat is clean, essentially. So it's. I agree with Frank that I don't see this coming, and it already sort of has come, at least in an easier way of an easier implementation, perhaps.
For
So
years, radio has been dealing with this, and Lois, you know this. And time delay has been the only answer, and it's 7 seconds, whether you like it or not. And you're just stuck with it, unless the whole thing is delayed from the very beginning, so that you can, maybe jump ahead. But it's impractical.
and radio is audio only, so that's much simpler. And I like Zoom's beep over there. But back to the situation Pete has. If this is a webinar instead of a meeting, then you can simply make it a recording, play the recording for your webinar audience, and you'll know that's clean, and then go on to questions and answers during the live part. So you could do that. If you're going to stream it, you can certainly delay the stream by 7 seconds or 5 minutes or whatever you want. And I don't think that's too hard. I have never done it, but I hear it's not too hard. So I think you have other
Actually,
tools.
the stream is already delayed 20 or 30 seconds just because of latency, I think. So
Right. But what Lois is saying is to actually have a mediator encoder. So basically, instead of coming out of the Zoom meeting, go RTMP to a streaming content delivery network, you would actually RTMP to an encoder that you would then build in that buffer that you would like to build in. And this can be done, again, depending on the software package you look at or invest in. And then you would just actually have that 7 seconds, 10 seconds of delay. But again, how broadcast does it, is this equipment is not cheap for them to do that. That's why a lot of them, if they go nowadays, instead of having that equipment on site where it's in the OB truck in the actual that's on site, some of them carry it, some of them won't. If they do carry it, that means there's a special person that now has to babysit the whole event and be able to make sure that, and again, and as Ray was saying, back in the old broadcast days, everything is delayed then. So you're actually starting that show officially 7 seconds late.
Yes.
And they used to do this all the time for award shows, especially depending on the people getting their awards. And that's why a lot of the Academy Awards, all the Oscars and such, they will do this now. This event is live. And, and then they put the disclaimer in the beginning so that they don't have to bring an extra person dealing with that specifically. And then on top of that too, doing the proper edits and such, especially if there's something, but it's always important, especially to have a fallback camera too. So
Yeah.
that's where you would go wide and not on the person talking.
if the person talking says a word they shouldn't say, they've already said the word. You can't muzzle the, it's already out there. So in radio, it was my understanding, and Ray, perhaps you can correct me if I'm wrong, that the person with their finger on the button, when they press the button, it inserted a bleep 7 seconds before they pressed the button in that recording. Is that what you remember, Ray?
Yes.
Okay. So
That's
we
what happened. That you're right, Lois. I work in broadcast radio also. So
it isn't applicable for something that is live. That's really the bottom line. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'll get off my soapbox now.
There's one
Robert has
other.
something.
Oh,
Robert
sorry.
has something to add. Robert, you've been anxious to jump in.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that there are special boxes that do this because on the one hand, you've got to hear when it happens before it goes out and then send that information to whatever distributing to it at that timestamp, do tutti frutti instead of... David's situation was cool because Dave knew that he was going to say something, so he pressed the button. That was the easy one.
I can do it to you too.
I know you can, but you got to hear me before you do it.
Right.
Because you don't know what I'm going to say.
There's one other way to approach this, right? But I don't know if your clients would go for it. Zoom webinars have SimuLive, which is a pre-recorded playback where you're texting and doing things in the meeting. So the meeting host can still communicate, polls, you can have all that stuff, but the recording is a canned recording. So you can edit it. You could do whatever you want in advance. You know what's going to go out when the webinar is live.
yeah, the other option we discussed was having whoever's calling in to voice something, call into a different phone number and not on Zoom, and record their 3 minutes of time, whatever they're allowed. And then someone would have to sit and listen to the whole thing.
Well, and that's the most logical way if you have to have the voice of the person asking the question. The other thing is to have a human being that they talk to, and your staff, the human being, then restates the question to the group.
Yeah,
This
another option we had was someone who wants to voice their concern types a message, and then you could have a software program look for certain words and whatever, but someone would have to read that to the panelists or whoever.
This might come as a complete surprise, but when you used to call in and ask for a song, we actually recorded that so that it wasn't available instantly. We played you back whenever we found the record. Those are the things with the whole, never mind.
It's like you just told me that Santa Claus isn't real. Why are you doing this?
David, on YouTube. How
Bleep
could
that,
you, David?
Bleep that, David.
No, bleep that retrospectively.
That was a great example, right?
Exactly.
Of how, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
These Zoom test kitchen meetings need meeting titles when the meeting's over. I suggest we call this one Bleep You.
Or bleep us. So,
You never
Robert,
know. It might get more traction on the YouTube.
Robert, you had your hand up a long time ago. Was that a different question?
Yeah, I got time lagged on that one and time barred as well because I was trying to answer a different question.
It's because you're in a different time zone. That's the problem.
Yeah,
We're right back to the time zone problem.
yeah, I logged in 1 hour early, so this is happening before it happens.
It shows on your picture, slow down. What does that
Yep.
mean?
It means that I'm asking the speaker who is speaking to slow down.
Oh, okay. Okay, no.
It's reactions.
Reactions.
I didn't
yeah.
realize that. Oh, that's good.
See, I got it speed up. He's not away. He's lying to us.
Robert's from the future.
An hour.
Getting feedback.
actually is
Yeah.
5 hours before us, or most of us.
That's one of those things that always gets people confused. Am I 5 hours before, ahead, or behind?
I'm not confused. I've been
When
on
did the
long plane
sun
rides.
when did the sun rise for you? If the sun rose for you and 5 hours later the sun rose for me, then you're 5 hours behind.
Or ahead? I'm ahead of you.
Or ahead, I know. Tomato, tomato.
So not a tomato thing. Those are entirely different, and yet they both apply to what he just said.
So
Oh,
we're
man.
solving all kinds of problems today. The time zones. And
At least we're talking
disappearing.
about them.
Right.
I'm not sure we're solving them.
No, we're not. What else we got, guys?
I just wanted to make a comment on Pete's issue because, like I said, I've got time lag today. If you have a Mac on hand, then you can use a shortcut to return back to gallery view very easily.
Only if you're using Zoom Cuts.
The Zoom
No,
cuts.
you
Mhm.
don't have to use Zoom cuts. You can just set it up so your keyboard does it. Because I've done
But when you're talking about using a shortcut, that's specific to Zoom Cuts. What you're talking about is a hotkey, which is just as good. But
it's tomato, man.
no, but it's not though, because for some, not every hotkey, not everything that you can do with a shortcut, you can do with a hotkey. So that's in this one case, that toggle that you're talking about, that works perfectly.
And someone is trying to take over the word shortcut and make it a proprietary, this is what it means kind of thing, just like saying word. And it's shortcut is a shortcut. And we've had shortcuts for 20 years.
Yes.
What I'm
But in
about
this
to do
case,
is done
it's
with a hot.
specific thing.
This is done with a hotkey on my keyboard, one button. But I'm using OBS because I don't have any of that fancy Mac stuff.
You have a fancy Ivy, so we're all a little
Ooh.
jealous of that. Yeah.
What's on our agenda next week?
Well,
Oh,
God, can we
Lord.
finish this week for goodness
Well,
sake?
I know, but I mean, do we have more updates coming? Is there a conference happening?
There are some updates coming on today's Friday, Monday. At
Okay.
least they're scheduled for Monday. Nothing terribly exciting, I think. It's mostly whiteboard stuff, it looks like to me.
That'll be fun to test.
Yes. Let me see if I can pull that up for us real quick. Zoom release notes.
Well, why don't we
Monday.
wait till it's here and then we can actually play with the real thing?
Oh, okay. But yes, it's whiteboard charts. It's actually, it looks like actually quite a large whiteboard update. Yeah.
So y'all
There's actually
out
some
there
nice
that are
stuff coming.
watching this, come back next week.
Yeah.
On Sunday and Monday this week and Tuesday, Ivy will be at the American Association of Medical Colleges in Seattle. So if you're there, stop by booth 427.
Oh, that's
I'm going to be
fantastic.
live. I'm going to be live here, pretending to be there, like we did at Zoomtopia, for hours and hours. So people walking through the exhibits was, what is that? Why does that guy bother me?
What was that experience like? Right.
It was so much fun.
Not for you, but for the people on the other end. Did they say to you, "Wow, this looks different"? What do you hear?
First of all, it was a meeting, a Zoom meeting where Zoom people, professionals that do Zoom meetings all the time. So they saw an apparatus with a small screen with some hokey looking guy that was near Orlando. And they thought it was an avatar. They thought it might be a recording. And so first and foremost, it was a showstopper. And then they wanted to find out where the camera was. Well, the top piece of here is only this thick. Well, the camera is half that. The camera is literally a four anyway, it's a high res camera, but it's only this
Megapixel.
thick. 4 megapixel. No, it's got to be more than that. Anyway, that Sony camera is literally on a circuit board, And so they just couldn't figure it out because the teleprompter's always got a camera behind a screen. And that was very interesting to them. But they knew right away what its purpose was. And they became engaged with me and completely forgot what was going on in the surroundings. And then Guy, we were on a cart. Guy went to every exhibit booth. We were told no guerrilla marketing. We went to every exhibit booth. We even went to Andy at the Zoom and he did the demo, but we went to Sennheiser and everything else. And all of a sudden we became engaged with people. Some of it was on after hours. It was very engaging. People recognized immediately that this is a tool that gives me this opportunity for this intimate format. It's pretty fun.
You know, we've
Right.
talked
Sorry, that was 4K. It's a 4K
4K.
camera that you have.
Yes.
You know, we've
4K.
talked about
Thank
this so much, that the importance, the power of eye contact. I actually did cave a couple weeks ago, and I ordered the new Elgato prompter that they just came out with. So I'm not going to get it until 2026, it seems.
Right.
But at some point I'll get it. But I'll tell you, just on Wednesday, or was it yesterday of this week, I had a telemeeting with a doctor. And this is someone that I see regularly. I saw him a couple weeks ago, and I started this meeting by telling him that I was really kind of turned off, because at our last meeting, he was looking like this the entire time. He never.
He was
looked
looking
me.
at you. He thought he was looking at you.
Well, as it turns out, he didn't. He was doing something else. But
Oh.
the point is, the same. The point is that, and I genuinely, I said to him, I said, I did not feel seen. Like, I'm paying you, you know, to be a doctor, to care for me, and I need you to look at me. And gosh, does it make a difference?
It is
So-
this is an intimate medium. It's different from a phone call because you can be looking anywhere. But in this case, as long as I'm looking at you, every one of you thinks I'm looking at you. It's just like if you're sitting at home and there's 10 people in the living room and they're watching a sportscaster or a newscaster talking to the camera, everyone in the room thinks that person's talking to you. But if I'm looking over there, then all of a sudden we're not engaged. And
Absolutely.
that's the unique thing about Ivy, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
And you know, I think that for medical offices or educational offices, things like that, Ivy is going to be a fantastic solution for individuals who may not be able to invest that much. I think maybe the Elgato prompter would be a good solution. Even that, I feel like that's a step way above where 99.9% of people are going to go. But if it becomes, if making that technology become a little more accessible, that to me is a good thing.
We have people who are saying, listen, the CEO of our company pays no attention when he's on these meetings. He just, and Robert will tell you that he's got people all the time that are, I watched Gerald here. No, I watched Gerald's meeting, and most of them are not looking here. And if they are, they're in a little tiny box down in the corner, hiding in the drain of content. And it is amazing to me that these people don't realize they're not talking to the audience. It's absolutely, and it brings to mind the our very famous group of here's our gallery of losers. If this will help make the point, the gallery of losers are people who have been talking their whole life using this medium, and they really don't realize what they look like, who they're looking at, what the system sees. This is a very famous guy. He was on Office Hours the other week, told fascinating stories. But guess what? He didn't look at the camera once. And he's on camera he's directing people. And then you get the bubble, and this is a CEO who just did not care. He was in the meeting, and he thought he was on a phone call. He was doing something else. This guy, of course, has ears. This guy has a box around his head. There's Gerald. This is why Gerald doesn't come on camera anymore. He's sitting on his comfy couch. This is a Zoom background. This lady was forced to use she's a Zoom employee. This lady, of course, has something running through her head. Oh, she's back. I don't know why. This guy, his name is Gad Sad, believe it or not. And he didn't notice that this is what he looked like. This is the worst one. This is a broadcast where the woman on your left is talking to a woman on your right, and they're both looking in opposite directions.
That one, the switcher should have just reversed those two boxes.
Absolutely. There's no reason why the TD could not have reversed these two idiots. It's just, it boggles.
And I wouldn't even call them idiots because they don't know what the switchers are doing.
I apologize. They're not idiots.
Broadcast
That's
anchors
unfair.
are supposed to look at, like back in the day before Zoom existed, when someone is remote in the field and the anchor back at the station would talk to them, the anchor would look into the camera to talk to them. Now they're just looking at their computer or whatever to see that person there. And that's up to, yeah, you're right, Frank, Ray. That is, I have this problem with the venue I told you about earlier. There's nothing I can do to change it. It's the way it is. Absolute bare minimum standards that they want. They don't care about anything better,
Well, that fortunately keeps people like me in business.
Yeah.
It is, and it's. I've been teaching people how to do this on stage for 30 years. Corporate executives who came up through the system and nobody's ever taught them how to speak, and all of a sudden they're coming to the convention of 400 people or 1,000 people, and these are their bosses, their sales reps, their bosses, whoever it is, and they're scared to death. And that's why the success with on-the-job speech training, the 8-minute speech coach, and that's what I developed it.
Now we've got into full commercial mode here.
Perhaps. And
I love
where's
it.
your beeper?
Right. Actually, Robert, I was thinking about you earlier because I was listening to a prime minister of a country speak, and obviously in his native language and with an interpreter. And look, I could never do that work, but I happen to know the language the prime minister was speaking in. The interpretation was just terrible. It was, it wasn't smooth. It wasn't. Now I'm sure they weren't given copy of the speech ahead of time because this was a press conference, so they were doing it off the cuff. But I don't know. There was a lot. I'm thinking about this because Ray, we've been talking about sort of levels of professionalism, right, and how to show yourself to be professional, and this just came across to me as very unprofessional.
There's it's a real challenge to choose an interpreter and hire an interpreter when you don't speak the language that the interpreter is going to interpret into, because you cannot assess the quality. And so the level of trust you have to have in the interpreter or in the agency that is bringing the interpreters has to be very high. I've seen this happen in different areas, but there's one thing I will say, David, Dave, sorry, I've never called you David before. I will say is that politicians are one of the most difficult people to interpret because they speak on such an abstract level. It is much easier to interpret a scientist, someone who's talking about physics, someone who's talking about literature, but politicians who are talking, there is so much blurbage in the words that they're trying to put across that it becomes very, very difficult to interpret. I mean, I can tell you a lot of interpreter stories when you've got I've talked about this before, that interpretation has to do with the culture that the language that is being interpreted into is associated with. I mean, we get people who come in and they'll tell a joke. Now, jokes are the most dangerous things to say or do if your text or your speech is being interpreted, because you don't know if culturally it'll fit in the right way.
Timing.
Timing. And I've seen one of the best interpreters I've ever heard or worked with at one point realized that the context was going to be offensive, that he said, "And that was a joke, please laugh." And of course, everyone listening to the interpretation burst out laughing. And the guy was thrilled. I mean, he really thought that he had told a good joke. Yeah, but it's difficult. And there are badly skilled interpreters. It's a skill that is not easy to acquire. You have to be born with certain associations in the head that can do the work quick enough and allow you to listen and speak at the same time. I say to my wife all the time that only she is capable of doing that. I can only do one thing at a time, but she can listen and speak and interpret what she's going to say at the same time. And so talk about that 7 seconds. Her ears are 7 seconds ahead. Her brain is translating it, and then she's speaking it. And she needs to listen to herself speak, of course, because she needs to know what she's saying, which isn't very obvious. And if you think it's easy, go and listen to the news, switch the news on, and just repeat what the speaker's saying for 5 minutes. You will be dead beat. It's like an impossible task. So, yeah. The other thing that a lot of interpreters get into trouble with, David, is the sign language interpretation, because sign language interpretation is also culturally and geographically different. Yeah? So an English sign language interpreter interprets different than an American sign language interpreter. So if someone asks for an English sign language interpreter in the States and gets someone who is from the UK interpreting in the States, his interpretation, his sign language interpretation, will be treated as rubbish, because it'll be completely, sort of, not completely wrong, but it'll be wrong to a large extent as to what's being expected. So there's a lot of ins and outs to go with it.
Interesting.
Robert, when you're back to the politician and you're interpreting what they're saying from one language to another language, and in the language that they're speaking, they are shading their words to mean something slightly different than and there's all these, like, there's 3 or 4 possible meanings for a word. How do you handle getting the right word, getting the right meaning of the word into the new language?
I'm not an interpreter, so I don't know how to answer that question properly, but I can tell you what I've seen people do. And the interpreters that are really good are the interpreters that get the message across. Yeah? And it's not a matter of translating word by word what is being spoken. It's a matter of getting the message across. And so they have a skill, they know how to do it, and they do it. I don't know. I don't understand these things.
Sometimes what the message is confusing, even if the person in America is speaking our language and we're listening to our own language, and you still don't understand or aren't quite sure what they meant by that. So I'm guessing it must be really, really tough.
Well, that's when you turn the closed captions on.
What language is that? American?
No.
That's actually a reasonable question. What language is the closed captioning? Does it depend on where you are? Does Zoom do it in different languages in different places?
Well, Zoom uses Otter to do its transcriptions and closed captionings, and Otter was designed to work with different I was going to say instances of the English language, but that's not the right word to use. But different accents, different regional
Dialect
types.
You can
Not so
try
much
it. Go
dialects.
to Otter AI and check it out. Otter.ai and experiment with it. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. We use Otter for a lot of our stuff. In fact, some of our interpreters, if you get and I don't want to call anyone out here, but if you get anyone with a very thick accent, for whom English isn't the first language and they start speaking, Otter usually does a better job than your own ears.
What's really discouraging is that my hearing's not all that great. And so sometimes I'll just I'll read the transcription as it's coming in. I'll read the closed captioning to see if I've missed anything. I lost my hearing aids 3 weeks ago, and I'm going to be February before I can get more.
Well, this has been a good session. David had to leave. He had something, hit a blurbish to attend to. That was the new word we've added to our vocabulary, blurbish. And Brody joins us just about the time we're done. So Brody, if you've got something to bring that it's not quite connected. Waiting.
While we're waiting for Brody, I can share one thing with you,
Please,
Ray, if that's okay. Just before I joined the Zoom meeting, I was attending a webinar by Opus.pro. Opus is a mechanism that is AI based and creates or generates shorts out of videos that you input. And they were showing some of their new functionality. And some of their new functionality is to remove the unwanted noises and sounds between words. So all the the fillers that people use. And it's really clever because it removes them all and gives you a clear, very clear message. However, what they're still working on is, of course, the video part of it because it jumps. When you do this in DaVinci Resolve, which has this similar function, it'll actually generate using generative AI, the missing parts of the video to fill in and have a smooth move. It's very, very clever. So that's one good new thing. The other thing is Opus now allows you to put in a B fill into your recording. So if you need to switch to a B camera or B recording, you can put that in and swap during the talk, which is also very good.
We back in the day when we would shoot film, we'd interview somebody, and that would be the over the shoulder, and then you'd turn the camera around, they'd leave, and you'd shoot yourself, and then you'd create two pieces of film, one that had the question, and then the other, then a bunch of black leader, and then the other was the answer, and that all had to be synced up. Can you imagine coming to this level at this point? Of course, you're not 70 like I am. That probably has something to do with it.
Hello, Brody.
Brody was here.
Yep.
Brody, did you bring us something, cookies or something you wanted to share? If not, Mike, I need to run too. Do you want to keep running this? I'm going to have to bail. It's always good to see everybody on Friday, and I wish you guys a great weekend, but I have to run.
No problem, right? Yeah, I'll give Brody a chance to join us here and see if there's any other questions that he may have.
Cheers.
See you next week.
Take care, Ray.
Take care, Ray. Bye.
All right. So again, I was just thinking about what Robert was saying when it comes to the translators. But again, I would assume that even with the sign language people, they have to have this type of mentality as well, because again, they're bringing it into themselves. Now they have to figure out the sentences and now actually do that as well. Robert, am I wrong? Am I right?
That's absolutely correct. And just keep in mind that these are the two types of sign language interpreters. One is someone who can actually hear and can and interpret, and then there are other signers who just sign because that is their mode of communication. And so there's two different modes that are taking place, but the sign language interpreters have to do exactly the same thing. And on top of that, they need to be very sensitive to their posture, because if you watch an interpreter in a booth, when the stress and anxiety gets up, they are like waving their hands and shaking their heads and moving around, while a sign language interpreter needs to keep a very calm posture and to be able to communicate, because a sign language interpreter communicates with his hands, his face, his facial expressions. There are a lot that go in there, so you can't let your anxiety get to a level where it's taking control of what you look like and how you behave. So yeah.
You said, Robert, that there were sign language interpreters that didn't hear. Are they interpreting from how? I mean, if they can't hear, how do they know what to say?
You know, it's a very niche group of people. They usually come from mixed marriages, where the father speaks one language, the mother speaks a different language, and so they've learned how to sign in two different languages, and they can actually be a bridge, a communicator between two people who are from different countries and both use sign language, because sign language isn't universal all around the world.
That is so cool. And then Lois disappeared on us. Oh, she's there.
I haven't disappeared. I got hungry before the meeting ended, and so I'm being polite and turning off my camera before I stick a spoon in my face.
Ah, the girl. There we go. The true broadcaster in you.
That's why I have the other camera view here.
I do radio, man. It doesn't matter if I got food in my mouth, as long as I'm able to talk clearly.
Yeah, just make sure that the camera, just make sure that you wipe off anything off the microphone, right? So that, you're not spitting anything towards the microphone. But okay, so Brody, any last words before we finish our meeting here today?
He came, he saw, he left.
Oh, no, Brody's still there. Brody, go ahead.
Sorry for stumbling in at the last minute here, but it's always good to hear what folks are up to, and see everybody, see somebody from the Zoom community.
Good to see you, Brady.
Did you have any questions or comments about the show today, or anything in particular that you wanted to talk about quickly before we end our session?
I think not. I appreciate the opportunity, but I think I'm in good shape.
Well, I'm looking forward to next week. Sounds like playing with whiteboards is going to be a lot of fun.
That does sound good. So
absolutely.
Was Zoom Test Kitchen off for a few weeks? I know was it?
No, we've been here every week, okay, at Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern.
Okay.
Of course, there was a time change, so
which we were talking about earlier about Brody. I don't know if you were.
No, I was not.
Yeah, we were talking about there could be potential issues during, if you do have anything scheduled Sunday or possibly Monday, to double check to make sure that if you do have a Zoom event scheduled, that there might be some, because of time zone issues, there may be some quirks they might accidentally in your calendar program actually might book it either an hour earlier or later, depending on who does the actual booking.
I'll show up.
But we weren't able to actually come up with a resolution for that. So if anybody from Zoom is watching, we're looking for an answer. But besides that, no, we haven't been able to figure that out. But manually, I guess at this particular point, just double check if you do have any Zoom events happening on Monday that they are at the proper scheduled time.
Will do. Thank you.
I have a quick question. And
Yeah,
I don't
go
know
ahead,
if you
Pete.
can answer it. But
Yep, sure.
is the Discord server for Zoom Test Kitchen going to be more active or what?
Very good question. As you probably noticed, I did do the announcements this week, so I was putting in the Discord. I was actually the last couple of weeks. I actually did do postings in the announcements
Okay.
regarding the latest releases and stuff. So yeah, definitely. I know Frank has also been posting in there as well.
Okay.
So, yeah, definitely the Discord is still there for any questions or concerns and such. And just make sure you put your proper questions related to what you might have issues with in the proper channels.
Sure.
It's a chicken and
Okay.
egg thing. If nobody posts, nobody's going to answer.
Yeah.
The more people post, the more it'll get used, and then maybe it'll get some more traction.
Yeah, because I know Frank and I are in there as much as we can be. And again, I'm always putting, when I find out stuff, I can put it in there. Of course, Frank has to be careful when he finds out stuff, what he can actually tell us and what he can't tell us.
There's
But
lots of sub discords or whatever you call it. I know in Reddit there's subreddits, but I don't know what you call them. There's lots of topics or sub forums in there. It doesn't always have to be about Zoom. It can be Zoom adjacent.
yeah, and again, I've asked David, and I'm still I'm just waiting for confirmation on actually having a vMix channel within Discord as well, within the Zoom Test Kitchen. Because again, if you caught us last week, I was actually demoing the latest vMix beta that actually has the Zoom integration in it. So if you want to check that out, it's on YouTube. It would be the last hour of that video on the archive.
Oh, speaking of integration, another quick question. Ever hear of a video switcher called Vassio, V-A-S-S-I-O?
Spell it out for me again.
V as in Victor, A-S-S-I-O.
Vassio. They are very well known in the unified communication world. What is the switcher doing for you, Pete?
So I'm curious if it can be integrated with functions of ZoomOSC. As in,
Maybe, but where I would look is in Bitfocus Companion to see if it's got integrations with Bitfocus Companion, because they've got a lot of the switchers in there.
Okay. So the issue we've had is we don't want a video feedback loop when we switch to when the video switcher switches to the Zoom spotlighted person. So we can manually do it, but I'm curious if if you could integrate something with a Stream Deck, OSC, whatever. You hit a button and it does those multiple steps to switch.
I just did a quick Google search, and it does have something for the PTZ version of their equipment. So it's worth looking in Bitfocus Companion or in GitHub and seeing. I haven't got my Bitfocus Companion up to date, but normally when you install Bitfocus Companion, there's a list of equipment or hardware suppliers that it interfaces with. So I'm not a Bitfocus Companion expert, but there's a few people around here who are. But usually you would use ZoomOSC, Bitfocus Companion, and the Stream Deck to communicate with the hardware, and then be able to, create actions with one button or multi-stage buttons or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you. Thank you, Frank.
Yeah, and just to let everybody know, because Frank brought it up, that Companion is officially at version 3.1.2 as of us doing the meeting today.
I wish Jeff would come back and visit and give us some more Bitfocus Companion updates, because he is the guru, and I haven't been paying as much attention since he left.
To tell you the truth, I haven't been paying much attention to it since Jeff left either. And one of my takeaways from the last session we had with Jeff is, as soon as Bitfocus Companion updates their software to a new version, half of all of your program stuff stops working, and that was pretty. That hurt because I'd been working with Jeff for quite a while on some stuff, and we just had to ditch it.
Dave's pretty good at it too, right, David?
Yeah, he's constantly, but I think David's got more simpler stuff than Jeff was doing, and
Yeah,
that's
Jeff
where
was
the
way
issue
out
came
in
out.
front.
And
Yeah.
it was difficult.
Yeah,
Jeff's
for-
listening.
Yeah, for me, I'm actually using Companion when I do stuff with us as well, and within my studio as well, because I can control my PTZ cameras with it. I can control my, the actual ATEM, of course, the ATEM Mini Pro. I'm controlling with it. Actually, let me just log in quickly here to my Companion.
Yeah. If you're
As a
somewhat up
reminder.
to date, just do a search and see if it has a listing for that sort of
Yeah.
company.
Yeah. So again, it's VA.
I think it's VADDIO.
Yeah. Is that correct, Pete?
Yeah,
I'm muted.
yes, it is Vadio. I'm sorry, Vadio.
Yeah, the only product as of, and I'm just one version behind, so I'm 3.1.1. The only product that right now that can be controlled by Companion is their PTZ camera.
Yeah, that's what I found when I did a Google search. But
Yeah.
you never know. There's always more broadcasting and AV equipment being added to the BitFocus Companion list.
Yeah, absolutely. Now again, too, Pete, we know that your hands are tied a lot for a lot of your productions, but of course, if there's any possibility of you getting better access to something, and we'll call that something relative, because again, a lot of things that you want to do, of course, can be done in the broadcast world, but again, this would be pre going into your Zoom client or your Zoom mechanism that is actually broadcasting to the Zoom webinar or Zoom meeting or whatever your client wants you to do, right? So
Yeah,
that would
yeah.
be, you would have to do it pre versus post, right?
Yes.
So that's where this comes into play a lot of the time is, and again, the more control you have over pre, the better off your post will always be, right?
Yeah.
And what some people have actually done too is that if they haven't got control of any of the AV at all at the location, is they will bring in their own, and I'll use it from the broadcast terminology, master control.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is your own switcher, your own mixer, baby mixer, your own baby video switcher, so that, if all caca hits the fan, then, whatever you're broadcasting on the main input that's coming from their main switcher within the room that happens to maybe go into iMag or whatever the situation is, you have a way of getting out of that in one way or another. So that, that could be done in an ATEM Mini, even a plain, you don't even need an ATEM Mini Pro even, because you don't necessarily need the encoder part. But, and even with the even regular ATEM Mini itself would at least get you that second video feed that you could always cut over to, your own camera that you bring that is like a total wide shot.
Yeah.
So now
All right.
if anything dies, you're now in that still semi-full control. Again, would this be a little extra bodies that you would probably need for the production? Of course. But
Sounds like it's pretty locked down, though. I think it'd be worth you taking 30 minutes and reading the Zoom support documentation about the webinar production studio that Zoom has, because that's not changing any of your hardware. It's not changing any of your, software really, except Zoom Webinar has this extra functionality that allows you to really control the layout and the scenes, if you want to call them that. So you can have 2 shots, 1 shots. You can combine things. You can spotlight. You can pin, unpin, all inside of Zoom without having to change any of your existing physical hardware. So that's something, if I were you, I would at least read for 20-30 minutes and see if there's quite a few demonstration videos on the web, and just see if it even looks like something you might want to bring up with your bosses or owners or whatever.
Okay.
Because
Thanks.
it's meant for webinars, right? Like that's the only,
Yeah.
it doesn't work in Zoom meetings. It only works in Zoom webinars.
Okay.
And Studio is part of the functionality of sessions and events, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
So-
a
so-
little bit of a different license, but
Mhm.
it also gives you backstage, which is
And backstage, exactly.
a really useful feature for people who want to bring in people to like a green room where they're in Zoom in the webinar and they can see what's happening, but they're not necessarily a presenter on stage yet. So you can cycle people in and out of presenter role. So and you can have private conversations backstage where the whole audience isn't hearing what you're talking about. So you might have a showrunner backstage and prepping the guests, or talking, maybe the director's backstage talking to people, and the audience doesn't hear any of that communication.
What I do, I've done in the past, is I use a different software as comms for like Skype, Discord,
Sure.
WhatsApp, and Google Hangouts. And I've set up like intercom channels in all of those, so I can, whoever I'm dealing with on comms, whatever they have, whatever's the easiest for them to install, we can talk through that.
Oh, definitely. And there's no reason to stop doing that. I think the biggest part of the Zoom webinar production studio is the ability to control what viewers see on screen and your layouts. And that's what you were kind of looking for, right? So that the layouts don't change when something happens. And I think Zoom Webinar Studio gives you a lot more control than the regular Zoom client does.
Does anyone here use or have heard of a software called Synergy?
Not I.
So what's it for? Because there's a lot of things called Synergy.
Ed told me about this. Basically, you know what a KMV switch is?
Yep.
Okay. So it's basically that, but you get to see both computer screens at once. As you move the mouse from one screen to another, it switches to another computer, and the keyboard follows.
Right. So you're talking about a KVM type solution.
Yeah, KVM. Yeah, KMV, KVM. Yeah. Okay, I get the
yeah, keyboard, which of course, which stands for keyboard, video, mouse.
Yeah. So it doesn't. Synergy doesn't change the view. It just allows you to move the mouse from one computer to the next.
Yeah, I have heard of that. Yep.
Yeah.
There are some software products that can do that. There are also some hardware products that also can do that as well. So it would depend on where you would want to go with this.
Okay.
So there's, again, you could do it physically. And again, that would be, old school would be, you'd actually get a KVM switch where you'd actually literally plug in, your keyboard, video, mouse into the back of the unit, and you do the switch there between one set of keyboards, mouse, and monitor. Or you would do it software, which I think Jeff was actually running many moons ago between his computers as well, so that he only had the one set in front of him, but he was able to go to his Mac, then to his PC, then to his other PC with only being on one set. But again, it was within software. So again, the software was all, so there are different methods of doing a KVM type situation. Hardware, of course, is always going to be more reliable than software. It's just, it is what it is. So your mileage will vary there. And of course, your budget will also vary there too.
Yeah.
It's pretty reasonably priced.
It is too. It was like about, I don't know, $30-$40 for
personal use, $29, advanced personal use, $59, and then there's a business one. They don't tell you what it costs. I put the link in the chat if anyone wants to see.
But Pete, if I can just throw my 5 cents at you, what Frank was saying is looking at the documentation on the live studio for webinars and sessions with backstage. I think it's worth spending that time because it may simplify your workflow. By adding additional software and additional tools, you're actually making it more complex, while the studio and the sessions has it built in which keeps it sort of under one. You can have a Mac or a PC with 3 screens, and you'll have everything you need to do whatever you need
Okay.
to do.
Okay, thanks.
I just put
you
a
know-
link. I just put a link to the Zoom support documentation, but this is more of a technical thing. I know on their blog, there's on the Zoom blog, they've got an article about Production Studio, and also I think if you go through the office hours archives on YouTube, I think they've done some demos, so you could watch it on YouTube and hear all the informed opinions from some of the people who are really expert in this sort of topic.
Yeah, I think it was the actual, if I remember correctly, office hours. Robert, you might help me on that one too, or in Brody. Office hours, didn't they not have one of the event services guys?
Yes,
demoing
they
that?
did. They had the famous 3 on board, and they came in and they did a whole session on that, and it was very interesting. And like Frank said, the production studio is part of Zoom sessions, so you can look at Zoom. There's the license is Zoom sessions, the easy license to get, or the cheaper license to get. But it'll definitely help you a lot in getting layouts, getting things switching over. And one of the things that really attracted me to Zoom sessions is in production studios is when you define your layouts, if someone drops out of the meeting, the format of the screen changes to accommodate the missing person. So if you have a 4 up, it'll change down to 3 up. And that person comes back, it'll jump back into a 4 up. So it really takes a lot of the handwork out of managing an event.
It's like OBS for Zoom, only Zoom built it purpose made, right?
Yeah, exactly. What do you think, Pete?
Sounds good.
I don't know if
Okay,
you can
so
see
yeah,
my
so-
screen share. I'm screen sharing a little bit of one of their
Yeah,
videos.
see something there.
Okay, well, I can stop the screen share, but there's
No, you're-
layouts. There's the idea
Yeah,
of
no.
layouts, and it's kind of like a software switcher for Zoom, where you can make predetermined layouts before the show starts. You can add branding elements, wallpapers. You can, if you're used to using a television switcher, like most of us here are, you can pick your shots. You can spotlight or pin, which is more like taking an input on a switcher in Mix Effects or something. So it looks like I have access to it, and I've used it a little bit, but I haven't really used it in a live event. I've just played with it, sort of, to educate myself more than anything.
Okay, thanks.
Cool. All right.
Just as we finish off, Mike, can I just ask you if you recognize what this is?
That is looks like a DI box.
It's a reverse DI box. In other words, it'll take a balanced signal and make
Right.
it into an unbalanced signal to stick
Yes.
into your computer. So I've been playing with these.
And they're not recommended unless you really, really have to. Yeah, those are the ones that you bring to the event that, last minute, all of a sudden, oop, I don't have a choice. You put
These
a
are
balance into an
lifesavers
unbalanced.
lifesavers when things go wrong and you suddenly get an XLR cable from someone with a feed on it, and you've got to stick it into Zoom and you don't know what to do. And it has this very magical button called lift the ground. So if you get the buzzing 50 hertz in the background, you lift the ground and you're clean. It is a real lifesaver.
It definitely is. Definitely
Chris,
is.
that's European. 50 hertz. Here it's 60 hertz.
That would be correct too.
Definitely.
That would absolutely be correct. Yeah. So So that's a Palmer model. Yeah, I'm familiar more with the Rodel models. There are also a couple other ones that Rodel actually will take an XLR or 1/4 inch and actually go to mini 3.5. So you could actually bring the mini 3.5 in stereo into your computer right away, instead of actually going from XLR to 1/4, then 1/4 to mini 3.5. So it takes that one extra step because, again, everything's built in within the box. So there are many different models.
Shure makes a nice XLR to USB line or
Yeah.
mic level adapter with gain control too. That's sort of cylindrical. It looks like a Canon connector too. I have
Yeah.
one of those besides the direct inject boxes.
Yeah, we use a lot of those for interpretation, because when we're having a hybrid, we'd have, say, 5 or 6 booths, and we've got to have all of these feeds going into Zoom. So we'll have 6 channels of Zoom laptops and then a box for each one of those. And USB is definitely the easiest way to go in. But I'll tell you what happens is that sometimes when we have corporate events and you bring one of those adapters that requires a driver to be installed, you're
Mhm.
locked out. You can't install the driver, so you can't use the
Right.
USB port. And this is where the lifesaver comes in.
Sure.
Because it goes into
Yeah.
the mic jack.
Yeah, actually, what a lot of people will actually bring as well, of course, especially if you're bringing in the video from a laptop as well, is they'll actually get an actual the most popular one that I've heard from a lot of my friends that have actually used vMix will actually use the decimator model, which is basically anything in to anything out, and that'll take any video, and as long as again, if you're like taking an HDMI out, let's say, out of the laptop, and you make sure that the audio is going down that HDMI as well, well, again, of course, then you can actually bring that down the SDI and then just break out the SDI, and then you have your audio. Again, if you're a podium and you're at the back of the room, of course, where you're near the FOH, which we call front of house.
Yeah. We use those especially in the newer hotels and newer hotel complexes. The AV systems only have an audio feed in via HDMI, because they assume that everyone will have a wireless mic connected to their wireless system and plug in the HDMI cord to their laptop to do a presentation, and sometimes they need sound. So we have a special unit that has an ingest into the HDMI and ingest our sound onto that, and it goes through and into the public.
Yeah. So unfortunately, yes, you're running into the unfortunate problem, which is the pro AV industry between installers and live event. There are actually 2 subdivisions of each other. So Robert, you and I have been in the live event world and had to put up with the installers that have put in Crestron, insert the company here, because they've had installation companies that have put in the AV, but installation pro AV is a totally different animal compared to pro temporary portable live event AV, which is a totally different ballgame in itself. So yeah, Robert, I feel for you. I'm not doing that much anymore, but yeah, I definitely feel for you when it comes to running into the, yeah. So this is why, I always call it my techie bag, and many people that know me, I always come with my techie bag. And what's in my techie bag? Adapters. I finally got a new, those absolutely, the DI boxes. Any kind of converter. If I'm converting from BNC to RCA to this,
Gender adapters,
gender benders, galore. Are in my techie bag. I never leave home without it. Is what I always say. And I can't, because 9 times out of 10, as soon as I do, I need something. It never fails, in one way or another, be it a small cable, be it a small adapter. Yeah, it definitely, to everybody out there doing live events, absolutely. Make your own techie bag, especially a cable tester. Can't say anything more than having a good cable tester. And Robert's got one right there. What do you got there, Robert?
This is a Palmer as well, because Palmer is like the Adam Hall brand in Europe. So this
I'm not
is
familiar with Adam Hall. Sorry.
You're not familiar. It's like what you call the radial in the States. In fact, it looks the same. It's all the metal housing. It looks very similar to those components.
Yeah.
And
Frank, for our sake, Adam Hall is a distributor in Europe, but Adam Hall's out here, and they basically have a lot of the big audio brands.
Never use that.
Mm-hmm. So this cable tester is a lifesaver as well, because it has XLR. I can loop XLR in and out and check the cable, and the most usual scenario is you put the cable in, you switch it on, and you jerk the edges because that's usually where the problems arise, not when you just
Yep.
plug it in.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then it's got
I will.
quarter inch.
Yep.
That's
Yeah,
solder.
speak on that. That's a speak on. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a speaker on with a quarter inch. And then in the front, it's got mini jacks, which are
Yeah.
also useful.
Yeah. Again, those are for your lead, so you could actually have your actual tester turn it into like a true electrical tester where you have your leads, so you could actually see if you're, I wouldn't necessarily stick it into a light socket, but you could. And yeah, so that would be for that. Robert, there's actually some newer models. I don't know if Palmer has it, but I'm actually looking into it again for ourselves. Is it splits, so you don't have to actually carry around the one unit and have the cable here. If you wanted to ever do like a cable run where you want to make sure that the cable A is at location is actually working at cable B and it's actually working, the unit actually splits in half. It has the same connectors like yours does there, but it splits in half and has everything on both sides. So you could actually have it at both ends to make sure that the cable that's installed behind the walls, and this is again more important to not trust the installers that did the proper grounding of things here and there, to make sure that they actually have done that too. And the newest model that I've actually seen will actually test, not only will it test that one strictly audio, but actually the one that I'm looking at also will test video. So it's got RCAs, BNC, and the newest one is HDMI. And it'll actually split between the two.
When you get to video, then you're looking at least one level higher in pricing. So I haven't found a video tester for less than about $4,500.
Robert, we'll talk.
I've got one of those split units for RJ45 cables and connectors,
right?
For all of the Ethernet connectors. That's cool. But this is just for audio because
yeah. So you can imagine if you had a split one for audio, now you could actually test that in-house XLR or in-house whatever, that you're trusting that the installer did, we hope, install everything properly and that it's not reversed in the pins and stuff. Because again, does that have the LEDs on it as well?
Yes,
Robert,
it does. It has them across the top.
So what it does is, just for everybody on YouTube land, what it does is it'll check each individual pin that's in the actual cable, and it'll actually let you know if it actually made a proper connection to both sides. If it does not, the LED will not work. But yeah, the latest model that I'm looking at actually has video and all the audio and RJ45 and RJ11. Even though you don't really need telephone nowadays, the good old POTS lines. But again, this actually had all of that all in one and splittable. That you would just need a 9-volt in both sides, and you'd be able to then test the cable from point A to point B to see if you actually are getting connectivity properly in the proper pins.
Yeah, but these testers are good when you have time. When we are in a live event and we see problems coming up, we just lay a temporary cable down.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Second cable, switch it over and forget about it.
Yep. Yeah. What we actually do is we will, if there was any problems with any cables, again, when I was doing it full time, doing corporate stuff, I would actually, again, bring it back to the shop, and all the cables would actually go on the tester before they go out again the next time.
What I
just
do,
to make sure that. Go ahead, Pete.
Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to. Yeah, I was just going to finish up.
What I've done in live events is when we're setting up lights, sound, or video, most of the time the tour will have a spare cable in that loom already, and that way you don't have to run a cable if you need to do a switch something over. It's already there. Because running long cables takes a lot of time.
Yeah, and again, the whole thing changes too, depending on if you're using an analog snake or a digital snake. Again, when it's digital snake now you've got to make sure that you test the RJ45 jack, and if you're going to a venue, like a couple of our dealers have actually told me some horror stories that they've walked in, and of course they have RJ45 jacks on stage for their actual snakes. So their digital snake will sit on stage, of course, and then the RJ45 is back in front of house. That's always permanent. Well, they've run into a couple of problems where that somebody has decided to cross connect that and actually put it on a IP switch instead of it actually being a physical cable. That's problem A. Then problem B was that they put it on the wrong VLAN, even though it needed it to be a Dante based traffic going between the stage and the front of house. So they had to make sure that it was on a Dante VLAN. It wasn't. So that was another networking problem that they've run into. And of course, the third thing, of course, is that misconfigured pins at both locations. So he had to actually have a gender bender to turn it into make it a cross connect so that the actual snake on stage actually saw the pins properly. And so he had to basically make his own temporary little joiner cable because the misfit in the wall jack that he was given was up as pinned, and he had to repin it and make a new cable so that it would actually work on the snake. It's all fun and games when you do live events.
Cases like that, they should, a well-experienced person usually has set up ready to go without having to do all that extra work, but it's different everywhere you go.
Yeah, and again, it all relies on most of the time on whoever did the installation at the location, especially if you're using the in-house installation. And a lot of pro AV companies, including myself, do our best to avoid the wiring in the wall because we just don't want that headache. We'd rather trust our own wiring, bringing everything in ourselves, than even trusting a wire that may or may not work halfway through the event and all of a sudden die. And then all of a sudden you're scrambling because you're running a cable between front of house all the way to the back of the room, all the way up to the stage because their laptop died because the port on the wall is loose, and all of a sudden the HDMI decided to pop out for whatever reason.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of cases where we do a video show in an arena, and it's not necessarily broadcasted, but it's up on big screens, and in most cases the video master control is backstage instead of at front of house watching stuff. That's how most of the tours show up, doing it that way. We did have one event last year. Trey Anastasio, who's part of the band Fish, came to play, and some broadcast company came in with their own trucks, and we just ran the cables out to their master control in the trucks there, and for that. Yeah. So just for everybody on YouTube, what Pete is talking about is what they call an OB van, and that is outside broadcast van is what it actually stands for. It's outside broadcast van or out of band van, depending on who you speak to. But basically what it offers is the actual full video production would be done within the actual tractor trailer that showed up on site. Again, depending on your OB van, it could be as small as a cube van all the way up to usually a lot of the big ones up here in Canada, where usually a lot of our dealers will actually be showing up in the 18-wheelers that are literally pulling up to the arena and doing the live broadcast from the venue, NHL, NBA, et cetera, those type of guys. But again, it really depends on budget. Of course, everything is going to come down to budget. And of course, depending on, our Zoom Test Kitchen audience will depend on, of course, if you're a studio within your house, of course, or you're thinking of getting into doing more mobile events instead of in-house events, which we would more call studio events, then of course your mileage will vary in gear, because you're no longer in the situation where you need studio lighting. Now you need concert lighting, as an example. And people that use studio lighting when they should be using concert lighting, it shows. I've seen a lot of those pro AV companies that all of a sudden would bring an example would be a studio umbrella
to light up a stage. I've seen that more times than I wish I didn't. But you know, again, you got to have the equipment. The equipment fits the job, right? So that's the best way of thinking of it. If you're within your studio, there should be one type of equipment that you have within your studio. And of course, if you're out and doing live events, such as Robert does, such as I've done in the past, again, you have to fit the equipment appropriate to that situation. And again, the more equipment that you would stay towards the installer world to use it for Pro AV Portal world will also get you into trouble too. I've run into that many times as well, where I'd run, you know, similar type equipment to like a Crestron, a baby Crestron video switcher that I would use for iMag as an example. Well, that used to be the go-to thing to use because there wasn't that many equipment in the Pro AV world to use as an example. But there are much better options that can be doing that nowadays than there was back in the day. But again,
we use Barco for that sort of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So again, but again, see, Barco again is a border. Barco is sort of half install as well, half Pro AV as well. People will use the Barco's much better at the Pro AV side, and because they do still separate their products. But again, there's still a lot of, you got to be careful when you're doing a lot of crossover of the using installation type products in your portable Pro AV events. Robert, you probably do your best to stay away from that stuff as well, because you probably run into that too, right?
I do, but I usually run into stuff that naively I take for granted that is correct. So we had a venue recently in a hotel where we went to do, I always take a switch. I always take my own switch to connect into the internet, and then from the switch I can connect whatever I want to and do whatever I want to and share whatever I want to within that small, within the switch vicinity. And the switch was losing the internet connection. It was jumping up and down. It was just unstable. So I changed the cable, made sure everything was okay. Then I called the guys in from the IT department, and they asked me what the problem is. And they looked at it and they said, "Oh, that always happens. Everyone knows, and yeah, everyone except me, that this conference room is the furthest away from the patch cable rack. And it's over 300 meters. So it's never going to work with anything, where any cable, any drop cable longer than 2.5 meters.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Because
Everyone
now officially,
knows.
yeah. So I'll just explain a little more in detail for everybody on YouTube. Basically, what Robert is talking about is your limitation of the length of Ethernet cable you can actually have. So Robert, the link that, or the actual port that he was actually given at the actual venue was already at that 300 meter length maximum, which again is 1,000 feet for us in the US.
I think it's actually 300 feet, 100 meters.
Sorry. Yes. Right.
I said it wrong.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Other way. Yeah. Fine. Yeah. So 300 feet on 100 meters. Yes. Again, I'm up in Canada, but we should be using meters more, and we don't. Again, it's the Pro AV world. They don't want to switch for whatever reason. So Robert was right at that limit. So he only had a buffer of a foot, maybe two tops, beyond when they actually terminated the jack in the wall, because it's 300 feet. So basically what they should be doing is actually putting a booster in that line so that Robert doesn't have that problem anymore. A quick booster in that line, of course, would have been another switch. But again, the installer misconfigured. You should have known better. So,
yeah. I just used a 1 meter cable to connect my switch, and then run all my cables from the switch. So I was at another 100 meter length. So I was okay. It was good to go.
Yeah. It would have been actually better for you to actually probably patch into a different room at that particular point.
Maybe there was one big conference room that we couldn't.
Right. Understood. But yeah, again, see, I've done it too, where I've actually run, when I did a church event, this was an interesting story. I actually had to run, they didn't actually have an Ethernet cable local to me. And again, this is 20-ish years ago when I was doing, when we weren't even streaming a megabit per second, and it was SD. So I had to run the Ethernet cable from the church's office, because it was the only one on that floor that actually had an Ethernet jack. And I literally had to run the Ethernet cable out of that office across the actual, we didn't want to put it on the ground because the more we had it on the ground, the more our gaff tape and everything else I had to put down. So we actually put it along the banister. The walkway had a banister, so we put it along the banister and just kept wrapping it around the banister and brought it all the way down into the main church area where I was set up. Not ideal, but you get in, when you get in, you have to be creative in the Pro AV world. It's very, very easy to become very complacent in the studio world because you're building it yourself. Once you get in the Pro AV world, as Robert, and I can tell you horror stories, of cabling issues and walking into the venue that you spec'd out a week beforehand, and all of a sudden everything that you're promised a week ago disappears for one reason or another, or the cable that worked last week doesn't work this week.
Exactly. I'll give you an example. Wireless microphones we had, a whole set of them in a venue. They worked fine during the tests. Come the event, we're halfway through the event, and they just started, all of them at the same time, this horrible noise coming through. And then it stopped and was perfect for another hour, and then it started again. And I just couldn't figure it out. So I called up my friend who supports me with all my audio stuff. And he said, go and look at what's behind the wall where you have all that equipment. And there was a kitchen with a huge microwave there. Every time someone turned the microwave on, bang.
Exactly. Welcome to the world of frequencies. Frequency world is not a pretty sight. And the more you can get away from frequency interference, please do so. I do not know how to promote that any more than that. That is for sure. Brody, any horror stories from many of your setups that we could add to the group?
Well, yeah, I got one brief one.
Cool.
I got one brief one. Number of years ago, I was helping, my wife is a figure skater, and her skating club was hosting a national synchronized competition. So synchronized skaters, anywhere from 8 to 20 skaters per team. And I was helping out with logistical stuff. And this was before I worked with the IATSE union, but I was working with them also, directing them what to do. So at one point during the competition weekend, these photographers came up to us and said, "What are you guys transmitting with?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" They're like, they have wireless strobes that flash, and they kept tripping off. Something kept tripping them off, and I'm like, your guess is as good as mine. I don't know. It's a lot of stuff in this building, and I don't know what's going where. So
yeah, no, exactly. So again, that was when you say wireless strobes, that was actually entertainment lighting, Pete, correct?
No, it wasn't for the audience. It was for what do they call it? The step and repeat. It's like a pipe and drape thing with a display that the skaters would pose in front of.
Okay.
And some of them have like sponsor logos on it and things like that.
Oh, okay. We're talking LED walls?
No. A place where the skaters pose for photos.
Right.
In the venue. Okay. We had official photographers snapping photos of them at this location. This was not for entertainment purposes. This was for just photos only, separate.
Okay.
And their strobes kept going off for some reason. I don't know what. I never could figure it out.
Okay. So this was the flash photography that they were using when they were posing. That you're talking about.
Yes.
The actual lights that they use for flash photography.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was probably, again, you got to be very, very careful when it comes to frequency related equipment. The 2.4 gigahertz range, I don't even want to tell you how many people in my neighborhood have, in the office neighborhood that we are in and in our home neighborhood that I'm in, how many people are using those 11 channels very, very wisely. I even had and this is the funny story, that my ISP router actually did a quick scan of when it was setting up to choose the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum in my area that would be best for me to use. It actually did the router, and I'm not lying. You really shouldn't use 2.4 gigahertz because in your neighborhood, it's really, really congested. Do you still want me to find one? And it went through the whole scan and it didn't find one. And so it actually left it up to me to choosing one manually. So that made me laugh, because I've been in the networking industry for almost 30 years. So I've never seen a router actually tell me that maybe I really shouldn't use the 2.4 gigahertz frequency. But again, yeah. So again, Robert, you were probably using UHF mics?
Yes, we're using UHF mics. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So again, yeah, the good old kitchen came into the situation. Gotta love those microwaves, aka we call them nukers for a reason. They nuke everything, and they nuke those frequencies too. So absolutely, Brody. Yeah, let's have one quick story before we end.
Yeah, I just was going to say I'm a civilian in this, but I do enjoy learning about this world. Seems like I'm coming in a little low there, but had a presentation recently on at a university that required a HDMI cable to a screen in the room that was not working, and I noticed there was about 5 meters of HDMI cable coiled up under the podium there, and I thought, well, that's probably a bit long. Was not working with the screen, and I was able to test a short cable, which worked fine, and the local tech, it worked fine in terms of connecting, but not in terms of the logistics of the room. The local tech pulled out his decimator and plugged that into the far end of the cable next to the TV, and that worked. And that seems strange to me. I didn't think decimators really boosted signal, which I don't think they do, but it did clean up that HDMI signal enough from that long cable, and get a clean signal into the monitor, which worked. So that was good.
Right. Yeah. So again, you'll never go wrong by having an HDMI to SDI when you're in the Pro AV world, and then coming back out again SDI to HDMI. Should you be going into like an A10 Mini Pro as an example, non-SDI model, of course. If that's where you, again, of course, it'd be better off to have the SDI model at that particular point when you're out. If you it's easy to have an A10 Mini Pro in the studio, but again, if you're doing a lot more events outside and you like your A10 Mini Pro, then I would definitely suggest getting the A10 SDI model that's equivalent to the A10 Mini Pro, so that now you have everything coming into SDI, and then just convert everything that is at the location, especially if you have a laptop at that location, you just go HDMI to SDI, and then your SDI all the way into your video switcher, right? That's the easiest way of doing it. If you do still want to bring out your A10 Mini Pro that has only HDMI inputs, of course, then you just need long SDI cables. I try to stay away from, and people have said, but Mike, you should be able to use the fiber HDMI cables. Again, they are breaking the HDMI protocol. What they're actually, again, the HDMI protocol says that it's an X amount of length. Robert, you don't happen to remember the number, do you? In meters, in feet? It's not very long. Let's put it that way. If you're already going to be, they're at the front of the room and you're at the back of the room, forget about it. Don't even bother. Would be the official answer at that particular point. If you're on the side of the stage of that event, maybe. But again, your mileage will vary, and your HDMI cable quality will also vary too. And that's another thing too, is there's nothing, again, the HDMI certified cables, if you can get those over the regular uncertified ones, they've gone through the HDMI process for a reason. So that's another quick tip in that regards too. There is a difference.
I have different experience though, because I have the longest HDMI copper cable I have is 25 meters, but it's nearly half an inch thick, and it's really awkward to use. I use HDMI fiber cables, and very successfully. I've been using them for over 3.5 years. I'm really pleased with them. The only time we have issues, and now we've learned to avoid these situations, is when you at a hotel venue, for example, when they say that a certain door is not going to be used for anything, it's going to be locked throughout the event. So you lay the cables along the floor, and then you come back in the morning and the cables are just ripped into pieces. And with a fiber cable, you do nothing. You throw it away and you get another one. But,
That's typical of a hotel. I used to work in them, and I don't know how to explain it, but other than their internal management is just not on the ball with a lot of things, unfortunately.
Yeah, and Pete knows too from the IATSE world too that gaff tape is your friend, and you should have boxes of it, and or cable runners, right? So again, if you're putting cables in front of doors, what a lot of the Pro AV guys will do temporarily is go up and over, right? But again, you need that much longer of a cable up and over the door itself. Yeah, it doesn't look great, but you're only there for a little bit of time. Hopefully it's not in camera shot. But if it is in camera shot, then of course you're doing a lot of cable raceways, and those are the best things to do. And you'll see a lot of those, especially in the older outdoor events, where you actually see that they'll actually have the fencing go right down the middle of the actual concert outside, and you have your crowd over here and crowd over here. Well, what they're protecting is the cable raceway that's going between the front of house, that's 100 feet, 200 feet, 300 feet from the stage, and the actual snake that's actually sitting on stage.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Robert.
It's just coming back to, and I've been very, very successful with these HDMI fiber cables, but it's just like with the Apple USB cables. You've got to buy good quality ones to start off with. Otherwise, you're just you're asking for problems.
Yeah, 100%. And again, why I stay away from HDMI is because unless you're buying gear that you can lock the HDMI into, I'm a big fan of, and I know Pete will agree with me too, because this is an IATSE standard, is everything's got to lock in. Ethercons instead of just plain old Ethernet jacks. We're talking SDI versus HDMI, because HDMI can pop out at any time. Unless you have the special HDMI that actually has the place where you can actually screw it into the actual physical unit. And those are different. And again, additional cost, and again, you have to have gear so that you can actually screw it into that. So the ATEM Mini Pro doesn't have that. As an example. So again, there's XLR versus 1/4 inch. Again, it's mostly there. It's grounding, because again, line noise will come up for free if you allow it. Because cables, what are cables? They're antenna for free. Especially an ungrounded proper cable is a great antenna. All of a sudden you'll get TV stations, radio stations coming through the sound system. Why? Because that cable all of a sudden wasn't grounded properly, or you're only using a TR versus TRS cables, or XLR.
Are some of the HDMI glass fiber cables, are those two-way? Do they carry the EDID signal, or are they just one-way?
No, I've not come across two-way fiber cables. They're all in one way, and of course that is a disadvantage, because you can't control PTZ cameras. You can't do things like that. But when I have PTZ cameras, I run either a RS, I think it's 232, run to them and control them that way, or use presets and a remote if it's a very simple situation.
Yeah, and I'll just go. And I'll just go one step further. Robert's using RS-232 or RS-485. Robert has this choice, but he's doing you're doing the mini DIN, Robert, correct? The round connector, right? So yeah, it's a lot more easier to do the RS-232. So the RS-232 cable versus doing PTZ over IP, there's more of a delay on PTZ IP than there is on RS-232. So if you do need more fluid motion of a PTZ, RS-232 is going to get that direct connection to that camera quicker than going over IP.
Yeah, there is
So-
no fluid motion on a PTZ. You switch to a stable shot and then you move your PTZ to where you want it and then you switch back. I have not seen any PTZs with stable, with a nice flow.
Yeah.
If I'm looking for a nice flow, I think I brought one on to the Zoom Test Kitchen once. I use these poly conferencing cameras, which are 4K, and they allow you to do presets, which are digital presets, and you get a 1080p preset coming out of it. But the movement from one person to the other, for example, in a conference, is just clean. It's completely clean. It's from frame to frame. You don't have any movement.
Yeah.
And,
So again, this is what I was mentioning about the difference between Polycom installation products versus an ePTZ camera. It's the same thing. So what you're actually doing within the Polycom or the Poly unit is actually doing what they call ePTZ, which is electronic PTZ. So all you would need is a camera that actually has the ePTZ capability within the Pro camera, and then you're good to go. And then you don't have to actually take out a Polycom unit that that has speakers in it, but you really only use the camera portion. Just as another stuff. Frank, anything to add from the old production days?
Oh,
Before we say goodbye?
millions of stories, but it's mostly bad wires or interference, remember when cell phones were somewhat analog and digital? So before it would ring, it would send out that little do, and it would go through your long XLR runs, and then we switched to Nutrix connectors and stuff. But then some of the mixers weren't shielded, so the cables were shielded, but then it was sneaking in through the back of the mixer. Stuff like that, like same horror stories every AV broadcasting person is going to tell you from around the world, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Been there, done that, Frank, right? That's what it comes down to.
A recommendation for everyone: if you have a spare cell phone that you're not using anymore, like this or like this one here, I'm using it as a camera. And there's apps you can get to connect them to your computer and switch them into Zoom or things like that. It's great because instead of a camera looking at my face, if you have, say, a workstation and you want to show what you're doing, like cooking food or something like that, you can switch to that camera facing down using that cell phone there. So just a suggestion for everyone.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Pete, because I've been watching some World Rally Championships in Europe over the last couple of months, and the guys who are reporting on it, Frank's got the real McCoy there. And they are actually using a new iPhone just to go around interview people, and the quality is absolutely amazing. When they switch from the iPhone to a production type camera that's used to track rally cars and focus in, or 4K, 6K cameras that are on drones that are following the rally cars, there's no difference. Absolutely no difference. And when we were talking about this in office hours the other day, Alex actually mentioned that they use the iPhones for a very specific reason, because one is they can broadcast live because it's got a card in it, a SIM card in it, so it's connected to some sort of mobile phone. And the other thing is, once they're finished, they can actually upload the recording immediately, which is also interesting. While the classical type camera, he's got his SIM cards there, he's got to go download them, put them into something, transfer them. So it's a whole long process. So yes, those phones are just taking over space.
I know some local TV studios have done this, is that if someone's out in the field and something happens that's newsworthy right away, they just set up their phone like this and go over the mobile data network to the broadcast at whatever app they're using here at the master control room. They bring that in with whatever software it is, and they can go live, until they get a news photographer out there or whatever. They can do that.
I think on office hours, they may have been talking about the new Blackmagic app, which is free. And I know it's on iPhone. I don't know if it's on Android yet, but for a small additional fee, you can establish a site that people can share. And that's the easy way to share that immediately, seamlessly, immediately from your phone to other people, including the studio or whomever.
Yeah, Brody's correct. Yeah, the Blackmagic camera app that got released actually has a lot of the similar features as much as possible that they can get out of an iPhone camera and mimic it quite a bit to if you're used to a Blackmagic studio camera version of sorts. They have a lot of the same functionality and features built into the camera app that they do also into the camera OS that's within the actual Blackmagic cameras. What else was I going to say?
I don't see it in the Google Play Store. I've got it on my iPhone, but I don't see it in the Google.
It's not on Android.
Is it on Android?
No, it's not. Not as of yet. No, not as of yet. It'd be interesting to see because, again, the Android world is a lot different than the iPhone world. So there's going to be a lot of compatibility that they'll have to run into. So we'll see how that goes for them. All right. Anything else, guys and gals, before we hang it up for this week in Zoom Test Kitchen?
I will just throw in one last thing, which is that if you haven't seen it, the Adam Savage bit showing the very detailed CT scans of cables and cable connectors is really fascinating. It was just published a week or 10 days ago on Adam Savage's YouTube channel, and they have some folks from Luma Vision, I think, or Luma something, that do remarkably detailed scans of CT scans of cables. So the question was, why does this USB cable cost $130 and this one is $3? And they showed the remarkable computing power installed in the end of a Thunderbolt 3 or 4 cable, which was quite amazing. And then they showed a whole range of USB cables scanned in great detail, and you could really see the difference in quality in many elements of the quality of a high quality USB cable versus a lower quality cable. It was a real eye opener to see that.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Worth watching.
There's definitely, when it comes to cables, you can run into, this cable is only $5, and as Brody was saying, this cable is $50, or even, could be even $500. And you go, why would I get a $500 cable? It does the same thing as the $5 cable. Not necessarily. Not necessarily.
You get what you pay for.
Absolutely.
That's why intercom headsets in venues like theaters are so expensive. And some AV companies buy them, some don't. Theaters have them, but or if you have a tour company that's got a big budget, they bring theirs along and plug into the house system. But yeah, it's you kind of get what you pay for.
Exactly.
I put a link in there. Have you seen I've never seen one in real life, but I've read about them, these new cables that have keyloggers and things built into them and can run executables on your computer. So charge your phone, you find a cable sitting on a desk somewhere, you say, oh, does anyone own this? No, okay, I'll take it home. You plug it in, there's a chip inside the cable, and now it's a keylogger, and it's also maybe infecting your computer. Like, It's getting pretty crazy. Cables aren't just copper anymore. There's chips in them, right?
Yeah, there are. I've noticed in Android phones, certain Android phones and certain cables, you plug the cable in to charge it before you plug the other end in. Not actually, no, the other way around. I plugged a cable into a charging battery first before I plugged it into the phone. And the battery turned on because there's a chip inside it that is powering, that it detected right away. So, yeah.
Yeah, and exactly too. And this is also when it comes down to, you know, we're talking a little bit about HDMI fiber, HDMI cables as well. And again, you got to have a good, you know, converter that actually takes the HDMI signal into that fiber. And that's why they're only one directional too. Heaven forbid you actually do out the wire and all of a sudden didn't read the end where it actually says display and source. And Robert knows what I'm talking about because he's probably done it before. That's why he's laughing.
I've done it before.
You know, there's a reason that it says display and there's a reason that it says source. So you got to make sure, yeah. And again, Brody, going back to what Brody was saying too about having, you know, CT scans of the actual, you know, ends of the cables. They're the brains, right? And if the cable is just a cable, then fine. Especially if it's what we call more of an active cable, right? So in a fiber HDMI cable, it is an active cable. You can get other ones that are not. You're then basically buying a fiber cable that can only go so far. Again, when you get the actual true fiber HDMI cables that actually have the proper source and display ends and are actually rated for that and are actually HDMI certified, then and only then would you be guaranteed that the true length of that cable has been tested by the HDMI certification body that allows that cable to be that long. Because now you're officially breaking the HDMI certification of a regular HDMI cable because it's not very long.
There's also one other challenge and limitation that I've found is you need to be careful as to what you plug those source connectors into because they draw power to power themselves from the HDMI connector. So if you just stick it into a camera that isn't producing doesn't have a good power source, you will burn that connector in the camera out very quickly.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw the link I just put in. I didn't even know about this part. One of these cables that is a sneaky cable, they're calling them OMG cables. They create Wi-Fi hotspots from the cable. The hacker starts recording keystrokes. The implant takes up half the length of the plastic shell, and they tested it in downtown Oakland and were able to trigger payloads at over a mile away on these cables that have Wi-Fi inside the cable being powered by, you know, the device. That's crazy. A mile away, and it's creating a wireless network that they can steal your data with.
Yeah, and the next thing, if they can do that, it's not much different than doing a SIM next. Have it actually call home. Why not?
Well, it's saying here too that they can create geofencing around it, and they can trigger the payloads based on where the cable is. So maybe you wait until it shows up at the company headquarters, and then the geofence tells it to go into action.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh yeah. Again, the infamous get what you pay for. And make sure it's certified too is the other thing that I could say about equipment.
Well, you probably
as well.
know a lot about pen testing, right? A lot of you hire a company to do a security audit. One of the things I like to do is drop random USB sticks all over your building, and you see how many people find a free USB stick, and they plug it into the computer, and then they've got the network, right?
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's quite interesting. Again, you know, in a lot of larger corporations, what they'll actually do too is actually disable or order non-USB port PCs and laptops so that they don't have that capability in it. Not many manufacturers will actually physically do that nowadays. So what a lot of them will actually do, especially if they're corporate-based laptops and desktops, is they'll actually disable the ports.
We were filling ours with epoxy.
There you go. That'll do it. 100%. That'll do it. Or again, you could actually, physically make sure that they can't get into the PC, and then actually take out leave the USB ports there, but actually unplug them from the main motherboard. If that's possible.
It's hard. It's hard, There's places where you have to have publicly accessible computers, and you can't always watch them all the time. So you do what you can do, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is absolutely scary. This article that you just posted, Frank. I mean, this is like, whoa, where does it go from here?
Well, I know even when I did a lot of live production, and we'd go to venues and stuff, and we'd bring our own cables and adapters, and people would make their cables very strange colors, like pink, very bright pink, because they didn't want to pick up anybody else's cables, and they didn't want anyone taking their cables. But now, it's all, if you're going to be in a shared venue with other teams, it'd be really easy to sneak a cable into your cable bag or box, right? Like, oh,
absolutely.
I'm coming home with an extra cable. Who knows what that cable does?
Yeah, or the person that was hired to all of a sudden go, oh yeah, these all your cables? Okay, and it goes in the road case. Might have been, 80-20, 20% is actually not yours. But
the worst thing used to be someone would steal your cables. Now they might give you a cable that hacks your whole network. You never had to think about that before.
That's right. So you never know. Again, if you never bought that cable, you can't trust the source that it came from in the first place too. Absolutely, Frank. I totally agree with you on that. Totally agree with you. Okay, gang, what do you think? We'll wrap this. We'll put this in the can.
Yep.
All right. Very good.
We had an hour of Zoom Test Kitchen, and we had an hour of Broadcast AV Kitchen.
There you go. Did a little bit of here, a little bit there, a little bit everywhere. There we go.
Great
Excellent.
to be back again, and looking forward to the next ones.
Perfect, Pete. It's great to have you back again, everybody. Thanks for watching, and we'll say goodbye to our YouTube guys. Take care.